Welcome to the fantasy audiobook, Cultivation Family, starting by taking a concubine and practicing the Sun and Moon Sutra. Chapter 81. Finally, he searched the bottom of the cabinet again and found 3 simple leather scrolls. Originally, he thought that this should be a pill recipe or a formation diagram, but then he thought that if it was such a precious diagram, it would not be thrown under the cabinet. After a careful inspection, he found that it was indeed the case. This is not a pill recipe, nor a formation diagram, but a recipe for 3 medicinal baths. No wonder it is not taken seriously. In the world of immortal cultivation, medicinal baths are mostly used by mortals. In the absence of pills and spells, a variety of medicines are boiled and absorbed by bathing to nourish the body, or to treat some external injuries. But this method is not common among cultivators, and it is even a bit useless. However, after Zhou Daocheng carefully inspected it, he found that it was unusual. The quality of these 3 medicinal bath recipes seemed unexpectedly high. Qingyang Medicinal Bath Recipe, First Grade Medium Quality, requires several first-grade medium quality materials: Baiyang fruit bark, Qingzi flower petals, small leaf fire lotus leaves. Use fierce fire to remove the outer layer of green, then use techniques to rub out the juice, simmer over low heat. Finally, dry over high heat to make a medicinal bath sachet for use. Huajuian Medicinal Bath Recipe, First Grade High Quality, requires First Grade High Quality Baishian Ganoderma lucidum, Yuelu flower, Bianwen tree bark. The techniques are the same, only the last step is to bake at a uniform temperature for 1 month, and finally mix and grind into powder to make a medicinal bath sachet. Jingling Medicinal Bath Recipe, Second Grade Low Quality, requires Second Grade Low Quality Shenkang flower, black leaf pear steamed, blood replenishing lotus seeds, red sun turtle blood. The techniques are the same: mix and steam, use high heat to evaporate the water for several months, and finally leave the light red crystal, grind into powder, and add the essence of flowers to make a medicinal bath sachet. The 3 medicinal bath formulas were not of low quality, and the materials used were extremely professional, not like useless formulas at all. However, the formula did not specify the effect of the medicinal bath, which made Zhou Daocheng a little unsure of the value of the formula. However, he still put the formula away and planned to try it first. If the effect was really good, it might be useful in the future. After a careful inspection, the 2 chose to leave after confirming that the entire room was emptied and there was no other hidden space. However, although the resources here were all moved away and the monks were all dead, it did not mean that it was completely worthless. After all, this was a first-level medium-quality spiritual vein, and its quality was comparable to that of Balin Lake. It was extraordinary to be able to add another residence for the family. A family that can survive for a long time must have 3 burrows. 1 more residence represents not only an extra income, but also an additional way out. No one can guarantee that Tianqi Mountain can always stand firm. The family will inevitably encounter disasters. At that time, if there are several hidden residences, it will be of extraordinary significance. Therefore, Zhou Daocheng contacted the family directly. This place is not far from the family, and it is convenient to use the communication stone to contact. But the 2 of them need to stay here for 3 more days, waiting for the family to take over. Zhou Daocheng returned to the ground and built a small house above the spiritual vein, intending to stay there temporarily. However, not long after, Zhou Daocheng turned around suddenly, looked at the woods behind, and shouted angrily, "Who is it?" Zhao Yunji's perception was also sharp, and she immediately drew her sword and prepared for battle. Zhou Daocheng's eyes were solemn, and his aura was concentrated. He explored deep into the woods, but he only felt 2 weak life breaths, and did not find a powerful cultivator. He approached patiently. As the dense woods were opened, 2 thin figures appeared in front of him. Their clothes were torn and they were shivering. They were about 4 or 5 years old. They looked at the 2 people with panic. Zhou Daocheng and the 2 looked at each other and immediately had a guess in their hearts. These 2 children are most likely descendants of this family. They accidentally escaped the hunting of the evil cultivators and hid in this forest. But for the sake of safety, Zhou Daocheng still drew his sharp blade and looked at the 2 coldly. "Tell me, what are your identities?" The younger boy was frightened and collapsed to the ground. His legs couldn't stop shaking. Then he saw water stains flowing out between his legs, soaking a large area. Zhou Daocheng raised his eyebrows and was speechless for a while. But fortunately, the older girl next to him had a much better psychological quality. After the initial shock, she trembled and said, We are the Lin family, the one in the red robe, killed everyone. Killed everyone. They are all dead. What surprised Zhou Daocheng was that when the girl said the last word, the fear in her eyes gradually dissipated, and a strong hatred emerged. Zhou Daocheng knew that compared with the weakness and confusion of the teenager, the girl had matured a lot, and began to understand the pain of the death of her relatives and the hatred of the extermination of the clan. Zhou Daocheng sighed. The whole family gradually left only 2 children. He didn't know whether it was lucky or unfortunate. Can you take us away? We don't eat much and we're not annoying. The girl raised her pretty face and stared at the 2 Daos with wide eyes. Zhou Daocheng said helplessly, Do I have to change the pants for this kid? I'll change it for him. Do you know how to do it? I can learn. Zhou Daocheng sighed and said, Well, wait for the family members to come and take them back to Tianqi Mountain together. It's better than leaving them here to fend for themselves. He had just taken the wealth of an entire family. If he ignored the surviving children in the blink of an eye, it would be a bit inhumane. Perhaps somewhere in the dark, everything has already been clearly priced. 3 days later, the Zhou family members arrived successfully. 4th aunt, 2nd sister, you are fine. Zhou Daocheng greeted with a smile. The visitors were none other than 4th aunt Zhou Shushuan and 2nd sister Zhou Daoyu. They were not sent to other stations, but were responsible for planting spiritual plants in Tianqi Mountain. They were considered half-spiritual planters, so they just had time to come. With a smile in his eyes, Zhou Shushuan rubbed Zhou Daocheng's head and said, You can do it, Daocheng. You picked up a first-order mid-grade spiritual vein as soon as you went out. This piece of shit is so lucky that 4th aunt can't bear it. Quote. Zhou Daocheng looked helpless. He was no longer at the age where he would be very happy if his head was touched and would take the initiative to rub him back. But then I thought about it. No one should go back. Seeing that the 2nd sister was about to extend her hand, Zhou Daocheng hurriedly avoided it, pursed his lips and said, 4th aunt and 2nd sister, hurry up and get down to business. Ha ha ha, that's right. This kid, Daocheng, is already married, so it's really not suitable. But before he finished speaking, Zhou Shushuan looked behind him with wide eyes, and after being stunned for a long time, he hesitated and said, But you have only been married for a year, and your child is already this big. Zhou Daocheng sighed helplessly and recounted what happened here. The 2 finally understood. Zhou Shushuan looked serious and stopped joking. There are evil cultivators in the foundation building period here, and they slaughtered an entire family. It's really shocking. I will report this to the head of the family, but these 2 children. Take them back. If they have spiritual roots, put them in Tianqi Mountain to study together. If they don't have spiritual roots, send them back to the secular world. Zhou Daocheng made arrangements for them directly. After the 2 sides handed over, Zhou Daocheng and Zhao Yunji also said goodbye directly and rushed to Balin Lake. The 2 had been delayed for a long time and had to get back as soon as possible. 1 month later, in the underground cave, Zhou Daocheng sat cross-legged in it, surrounded by rich spiritual energy, and a layer of rich Wu Earth spiritual energy attached to his body, emitting a faint light. As the breath condensed, the heavy Wu Earth magic power was like a flood that broke through the dam, instantly breaking through the barrier in front. The next moment, the body entered a new level, like a sponge soaked in water, and began to greedily absorb the surrounding spiritual energy. Wu Tu Kun Yu Gong was running wildly, constantly compressing and converting the attributelless spiritual energy into heavier Wu Tu mana. After reaching the 8th level of Qi refining, the mana in the body was further compressed and became heavier and thicker. If the mana of other cultivators of the same level is like wood, then Zhou Daocheng's Wu Tu mana is a brick. Silently feeling the changes in his body, he could clearly feel that after breaking through the 8th level of Qi refining, his body was nurtured and became more tough and strong. At the same time, his defense and endurance were also further improved, his breath was long, and his organs, blood, skin, and muscles were far superior to ordinary cultivators. But the only thing that remained unchanged was that his offensive ability was still seriously insufficient, but he became more resistant to beating, but if he wanted to quickly defeat the strong men of the same level, he could only rely on other means. This was a big regret. Slowly restraining his breath, he opened his eyes in the dark, and a ray of joy appeared in his eyes. I didn't expect that it only took a month to successfully break through the bottleneck. This was faster than he had expected, but after thinking about it, he understood the reason. The advantages brought by the third-level superior technique, Wutu Kun Yu Gong, are too obvious. In terms of cultivation speed alone, Zhou Daocheng is not fast, it can only be said to be mediocre, but it is stable and solid, which makes it easier to break through the bottleneck in the early stage. Zhao Yunji had reached the peak of the 7th level of qi refining a year ago, but was blocked by this bottleneck for a whole year. A large part of the reason is that Zhao Yunji's technique is very poor, it is a broken 2nd level inferior technique, and it is difficult to practice to the foundation building stage. This is also the sadness of small families. Even if there are descendants with extremely high talents, there is no fully adapted technique, and the talent can only be wasted in the end. After the breath stabilized, Zhou Daocheng gathered the spiritual energy around him and ended this retreat. Since returning a month ago, Zhou Daocheng vaguely felt the opportunity for a breakthrough, so he went into retreat directly, and now he has finally made a successful breakthrough. With the strength of the 8th level of qi training, even the strong men of the 9th level of qi training cannot hurt him, and the two sides can only draw at most. And as his strength increases, his own abilities are improved in all aspects, including the control of formation skills, and he should be able to officially start to arrange the 1st level superior formation. Zhou Daocheng has been looking forward to the 100 Vine formation and Green Spirit Sword formation for many days. If he can successfully refine the formation plate, Zhou Daocheng believes that his strength is enough to match the peak of the 9th level of qi training. And now he has sufficient funds, equipped with convenient magic tools, talismans, elixirs, and even buys a puppet, then his strength will undergo a qualitative change, and it will be difficult to meet an opponent below the foundation building stage. If he goes one step further and finds 2 sets of 1st level superior formations suitable for fusion, and successfully uses the fusion formation method to create a new formation, then his strength will definitely be stronger. An ordinary 1st level superior formation has the strength comparable to the 9th level of qi training, and even only needs an 8th level qi training strongman to control it to fight against the 9th level of qi training. The power of the fusion array is even higher. Zhou Daocheng estimated that even if he had reached the great perfection of qi refining, it would be difficult to defeat himself in the 1st grade upper grade fusion array. But relatively speaking, the arrangement of the 1st grade upper grade array is more difficult, far from being comparable to the 1st grade middle grade and lower grade arrays. This retreat will take a long time, so I'd better come out temporarily. It seems that Lao Mang has something to ask me. Stretching lazily, Zhou Daocheng chose to end it temporarily and check the situation of the underground cave. The quality of the purple qi green spirit bamboo is still improving. It has stabilized at the 2nd grade lower grade. The overall thickness is a lot bigger, and there are faint purple lines on the surface of the bamboo pole, which looks extremely extraordinary. Moreover, the quality of the purple qi green spirit bamboo is still improving. The other 5 green spirit bamboo shoots have also successfully reached the 1st grade upper grade recently, which just meets the requirements of the green spirit sword array. As long as the technology is reached, they can start to arrange it smoothly. The black patterned lotus in Lingquan's eyes still has only small buds, but the vitality is much richer, but it will take a long time to mature. While he was looking at it, the communication disc in his arm suddenly vibrated again. Zhou Daocheng took a look and found that it was a message sent by Meng Yushan. He only glanced at it twice, and his eyes flashed with light and a thoughtful look emerged. The Spirit Snake sect invites us to open a store together. What's going on? Without staying any longer, Zhou Daocheng left the underground cave and headed for the valley behind. When they arrived, there were only Lin Yuan and several qi refining level 7 masters in the valley. Where are Meng Yushan and Qin Lai? Lin Yuan yawned and said, Qin Lai is still in retreat. Meng Yushan went to receive the elders of the Spirit Snake sect. Are the elders of the Spirit Snake sect here? Zhou Daocheng asked. I just came here not long ago, and it seems that they want to discuss some cooperation. I have come here several times before, but I was always evaded by old Meng. He said that this matter has to wait for you to make a decision. Zhou Daocheng nodded and put on a black robe. Meng Yushan sat upright and said in a deep voice, Elder Han, I can't make a decision on this matter. It still needs the decision of the elders in the sect. Then I wonder when your sect elders can come out of retreat? Han Yi asked anxiously. The cooperation with Shanghai sect was a decision made by the sect after a lot of discussions, and it was related to the development direction of the Spirit Snake sect for a long time in the future. If it succeeds, the Spirit Snake sect will usher in a qualitative change, gain extremely rich benefits, and further bind the relationship with the Shanghai sect. But he has come 5 times, and the elders of the Shanghai sect have been in seclusion, which really makes him anxious. Ahem. A light cough interrupted the chat. Young master, Meng Yushin blurted out. Zhou Daocheng's face suddenly froze, and he looked at Meng Yushin coldly. He is an elder of the sect, what do you mean by calling me young master? Meng Yushin immediately realized the mistake and was about to explain. However, before he opened his mouth, he was interrupted by Zhou Daocheng, saying, this matter does not need the elders to decide, just leave it to me. Elder Han, who was opposite him, was stunned for a moment. He cautiously spied on this person, only to notice an extremely obscure but terrifying aura as thick as a mountain. Even he, an elder at the 9th level of Qi refining, couldn't help but feel frightened. This kind of strength is even worse than that of the previous elder. May I ask who this is? Out of politeness, Elder Han asked cautiously. After Zhou Dao's reminder, Meng Yushin immediately reacted and explained, this is the young master of our Shanghai sect. He has full authority to handle matters here. If Elder Han has anything, he can talk to the young master directly. It turns out he is the young master of your sect. He has such strength at such a young age. Han admires him. Zhou Daocheng waved his hand, sat calmly on the stone chair nearby, and said, that's ridiculous. You are from the Spirit Snake sect, right? I wonder what you have come to discuss today. Han Yi also hurriedly sat down and said seriously, I am here on behalf of the Spirit Snake sect to discuss cooperation with the Shanghai sect, hoping to achieve a deeper cooperative relationship. Tell me more specifically. Zhou Daocheng is also curious about how the Spirit Snake sect wants to cooperate. If it is profitable, there is no harm in participating. Han Yi's face showed joy and he quickly replied, to be honest, little friend, the source of this matter lies in the Qi family. The Qi family fought with our Spirit Snake sect and several elders of the 9th level of Qi refining died. Although the struggle for the mineral veins has ended, the conflicts still continue. So in order to gather power, the Qi family recalled a large number of powerful people to the family, so they had to give up some of their locations, and the store in Baihifang City is one of them. Our sect leader plans to purchase Kijia's store at a low price, and then cooperate with the Shanghai sect to operate the store. I wonder what the master wants. Zhou Daocheng thought carefully, weighed the pros and cons in his mind, and then asked calmly, since you are running a shop, what kind of industry does your Spirit Snake sect plan to run? Han Yi smiled and replied, my Spirit Snake sect knows a little bit about the art of controlling beasts, and plans to sell domesticated spirit insects, monsters, etc., while your Shanghai sect is good at formations and can manage formations. Both are precious and rare skills. Whether it is formations or spiritual beasts, the number in Baihifang City is very small, but the demand among monks is huge, so there is no need to worry about sales. Zhou Daocheng raised his eyebrows in surprise. He didn't expect that the Spirit Snake sect was proficient in such skills, but after thinking about it for a while, he found that it was not difficult to figure out the matter. Since the ancestors of the Spirit Snake sect contain the 2nd-level Spirit Snake, it shows that they have the ability to control beasts, and it is not unusual for them to be passed down. As Han Yi said, just relying on the reputation of beast control and formation is enough to set off a huge wave, allowing the shops operated by the 2 sects to rise rapidly and gain a lot of wealth. However, after Zhou Daocheng thought for a long time, he suddenly asked a question. The reputation of beast control and formation is indeed not small, so have you ever thought about making this reputation more famous? Han Yi was stunned for a moment and asked with some confusion, louder. I wonder what you mean, sir. Now that we already have formations and beast control skills, if we can combine alchemy, weapon refining, talismans and other immortal cultivation skills, will the gimmick be even greater? After saying this, a look of thought appeared on Han Yi's face. He had never thought of such a bold idea. But now that it was brought up, he was immediately surprised and felt that there was much to do. The cooperation of various immortal cultivation techniques, the management of formations, elixirs, spiritual beasts, magic weapons, and talismans, coupled with the cooperation of the forces behind it, this must be a behemoth. Young Master's idea is really admirable, but I can't make a decision on this matter. I need to go back and ask the sect master for his opinion. It's okay. There's no need to worry at this time. Elder Han can just go back and discuss it. Then Han will say goodbye for now. 5 days later, the Spirit Snake Sect. Han Yi hurried back as quickly as possible, barely resting along the way. After returning to the sect, he rushed directly into the sect leader's resting place, frightening the other monks of the Spirit Snake Sect. I originally thought that Han Yi would be thrown out directly by the sect leader, but unexpectedly for a quarter of an hour, hearty laughter could be heard in the room. A ray of light shot out from the eyes of the leader of the Spirit Snake Sect, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. He couldn't help but sigh. This kid has a good idea, and he is definitely not an ordinary person to have such a vision. Han Yi didn't expect that the sect master would agree so much, so he couldn't help asking, "Sect master, then we agree to cooperate." "Why don't you agree? Not only must you agree, but you must agree with your full strength and thoroughly promote the implementation of the plan." The leader of the Spirit Snake Sect had firm eyes and made a decisive decision. But then a look of thought appeared in his eyes, and he frowned and murmured to himself, "We still need to unite 3 forces that are proficient in alchemy, weapon refining, and talismans, which is a bit troublesome. Sect Master, Beifu Pavilion has always been on good terms with us, and we are proficient in talismans. Maybe we can win over them," Han Yi suggested cautiously. "Yes, Beifu Pavilion's talisman skills are profound, the sect is pure, and the strength is also good. With a strong foundation builder, all conditions are met." The leader of the Spirit Snake Sect nodded slightly, with a trace of satisfaction in his eyes. "But there are 2 skills left. What should the sect leader do?" The leader of the Spirit Snake Sect considered for a moment, but did not give an answer, but ordered, "For now, please reply to the Shanghai sect and tell us that we agree to cooperate, and that the Fulu lineage is already thinking of ways to make alchemy and weapon refining, and ask them if they have channels." In fact, in his opinion, as long as the Spirit Snake Sect and the Mountain and Sea Sect reach a cooperation, it will no longer be difficult to find a force that is proficient in alchemy, refining, and talismans. There are many forces willing to participate in such cooperation. After all, in terms of quantity, although there are not many forces that have inherited alchemy, refining, and talismans, their number is definitely much greater than that of formations and beast control. With the gimmicks of formations and beast control, it can also drive the sale of other immortal cultivation skills. Both sides complement each other and can make profits. When Zhou Daocheng got the reply, he was relieved. It was a good thing that the Spirit Snake Sect could solve the talisman. But he had to consider whether he should choose the Zhou family as the weapon refining force. In terms of emotion, the Zhou family is naturally the best choice. It can greatly drive the expansion of the family industry, and officially enter the Baihifeng city, and can also take the opportunity to expand its influence and earn more wealth. But from a selfish point of view, once the family is involved, the secrets hidden by himself are likely to be leaked, and the identity of the array master will most likely not be concealed. The pros and cons here forced Zhou Daocheng to consider carefully. This problem troubled Zhou Daocheng for a whole week, and he never made up his mind. Then a sudden news came, which completely changed his mind. "Daocheng, something happened to the family. Come over here as soon as possible." This was the message sent by the eldest brother Zhou Daobai. After only reading it for the first time, Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but frown. "I had only been in Balin Lake for a few days, and something happened to my family." It was really puzzling. However, hearing the eldest brother's serious tone, it seemed that the matter was not simple. Zhou Daocheng did not dare to hesitate and immediately got up and rushed to Zhou Daobai's island. "Brother, what happened?" Zhou Daocheng hurried over and saw Zhou Daobai's figure on the edge of the island. He had obviously been waiting here for a long time. Zhou Daobai's face was extremely gloomy, and he carried a long green sword on his back. The aura around his body was extremely sharp, making Zhou Daocheng feel uncomfortable, as if he was about to be cut open. Vaguely, Zhou Daocheng suddenly realized that his elder brother's strength was definitely not as simple as it seemed. He has broken through to the 8th level of qi refining, and he is still practicing the 3rd level high-grade, Wutu Kunyu Gong. With his extremely strong defense, few Qi refining monks can make him feel dangerous. But at this moment, just standing there, my eldest brother gave people a feeling of sharpness. Even after carefully exploring its cultivation level, it turned out to be extremely blurry and unable to be fully seen. Not only Zhou Daocheng felt this way, Zhou Daobai's eyes also became extremely deep when he saw Zhou Daocheng coming towards him. Although he did not feel the dangerous aura in his 6th brother, it gave him an extremely heavy feeling, like the pressure coming from the mountains, perfectly resisting his unexpected edge. This 6th brother seems to have become unusual. Zhou Daobai's eyes were meaningful, but considering the seriousness of the situation, he did not take the initiative to ask. Instead, he took the lead and said, "Something happened at home. I don't know what means the Ma family used to convince the Chen family." The 2 major families jointly sent 6 9th level Qi refining people. The strong ones have surrounded Ironwood Mountain, and the family has sent us over to support them. Zhou Daocheng's expression immediately became serious. No matter from any level, this information was extremely serious. In terms of the value of Ironwood Mountain alone, with a 1st level high-grade spiritual vein and thousands of ironwood trees, it is the most important place for the family, if not the only one. Once it is lost, the loss will be no less than 100,000 spiritual stones. And the loss of spiritual stones is not the point. Without the continuous supply of weapon-making materials from Ironwood Mountain, it would be equivalent to digging out the roots of the Zhou family and cutting off a piece of its heritage. This would be extremely fatal to future development and could very well set the Zhou family back for decades. As for the Chen family, although this family is not proficient in weapon refining, they do know how to refine spirit boats. They also need ironwood very much, so they have been eyeing Ironwood Mountain for decades. This is also the reason why the family sent 2 elders to guard Ironwood Mountain. It's just that there is no deep hatred between the Zhou family and the Chen family. The collusion with the Ma family in this sneak attack is really unexpected. At the same time, there are a large number of Zhou family members stationed in Ironwood Mountain, more than 30 Zhou family monks, including Zhou Daobai's grandfather, 5th elder Zhou Chenghai, and Zhou Daocheng's grandfather Zhou Chengyuan. This represents not only 2 family elders at the 9th level of Qi refining, but also relatives whose blood is thicker than water. Although Zhou Daocheng was anxious, he still asked calmly, "The other party has 6 strong men at the 9th level of Qi refining. The 2 of us will go. I'm afraid it won't be enough. The 2nd elder has already led the hunting team there, and the family will also send people over. We are just assisting and taking the opportunity to meet the people of Ironwood Mountain." Zhou Daocheng nodded slightly when he heard this and said, "Then go over immediately. Yunji, you stay in Balin Lake. Cooperate with Lao Meng if you have anything to do, and wait for my return." "Okay, leave this to me." Zhao Yunji agreed in a deep voice. Zhou Daobai naturally noticed the word, Lao Meng, but he didn't ask any more questions. Instead, he was surprised by Zhou Daocheng's calmness and was not at all panicked as expected. The 2 set off immediately and rushed to Ironwood Mountain. Zhou Daobai's pace is fast and fierce, while Zhou Daocheng's is thick and steady. Their speed reaches the 9th level of Qi training, and their endurance is extremely high. This made the 2 of them look at each other with admiration. Zhou Daocheng thought to himself, his eldest brother is hiding a lot. On the surface, he only has the 7th level of Qi refining, but in fact, he has definitely reached the 9th level of Qi refining. But thinking about it, Balin Lake is an important place. How could it be possible to only send 3 monks at the 7th level of Qi refining? Perhaps in the family master's plan, Zhou Daobai is the Dinghai Shenzhen here, and the only qualification for foundation building may indeed have been predetermined, but it is not the 4th brother Zhou Daoqi, but this secretive eldest brother. With the 2 people's full efforts, the 10-day journey took only 6 days to quickly reach the vicinity of Ironwood Mountain. Zhou Daobai looked at the surrounding environment with sharp eyes. Although everything seemed calm and unchanged, he could detect abnormalities in the subtleties. "6th brother, how do you feel about the situation here?" Zhou Daocheng's eyes were calm, considering every detail extremely carefully, and said calmly, "It's too quiet, abnormally quiet." Then he explained, "Ironwood Mountain has a first-order high-grade spiritual vein, and there is a lot of vegetation growing there. There are so many birds and beasts around it. It cannot be so quiet. It should have been cleaned up. Zhou Daobai nodded secretly and said, it shouldn't be possible to get in through the normal route. I know a secret passage. You can go and have a look. Zhou Daobai was about to take action, but was held back by Zhou Daocheng. Don't go. Since they can trap the elders here, they will never let go of this secret passage. They are encircling the point to call for reinforcements, waiting. It's us, if we break in rashly, we will die. Zhou Daobai frowned, but he still suppressed the anxiety in his heart and asked cautiously, Sixth brother, what are you going to do? First use the communication stone to contact the interior of Ironwood Mountain, and wait for reinforcements from Mr. Zhang and his family. Don't rush this matter. Zhou Daocheng chose a more prudent strategy. When faced with encirclement and reinforcements, he was most taboo about reckless rescue and arbitrarily mobilizing manpower, which would easily lead to gradual embezzlement, leading to a more corrupt situation. So after a brief discussion, the two secretly retreated to the depths of the mountain forest, far away from Ironwood Mountain, and waited for the arrival of other tribesmen. 2 days later, the second elder Zhou Chengping arrived and successfully met the two of them, but he also brought worse news. No need to wait, the family will not send anyone over again. The Ma family has taken action against the transportation team of Beiki Pavilion. Dodge Shouyun was attacked by surprise. Shou Rong and the others have already gone to support. Now there is no extra manpower. Zhou Chengping said in a cold voice. Like ice, there is a bit of fierceness in the eyes. Then we are the only ones here in Ironwood Mountain? Zhou Daobai asked, feeling the difficulty of the matter and feeling the pressure doubled. What, just like us? Zhou Shoxin, the deputy of the hunting team and a senior of the Zhou family, couldn't help complaining, I really don't know how the family master arranged it. There are 6 9th-level qi refining experts here. I just sent an elder and 2 juniors, aren't they here to die? As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere was once again depressing, and a heavy haze pressed on the hearts of every clan member. Snort. The second elder Zhou Chengping snorted angrily, and powerful energy hit Zhou Shoxin's chest, and said loudly, the dignified deputy of the hunting team, is the person who will take over the position of leader of the hunting team in the future only have this kind of character. Father, Zhou Shoxin's face turned pale. When you are away from home, please call me second elder. The second elder did not give any face, interrupted him indifferently, looked at the others and said, since the head of the family has arranged it like this, then this is the best arrangement now. If I find someone disturbing the morale of the army again and fleeing from the battle, don't blame the second uncle for my falling out. Don't recognize anyone. The members of the hunting team suddenly fell silent, unable to say a word. Having followed the second elder all year round, they naturally understand the second elder's character. While the second elder was teaching him a lesson, Zhou Daocheng and his eldest brother Zhou Daobai looked at each other. Then the two of them connected with each other and released the aura around them at the same time. Suddenly, 2 auras that were no weaker than the second elders covered the surroundings, causing everyone's expressions to change drastically. Zhou Daobai has already reached the 9th level of Qi training, and he has not just broken through. He has already stabilized himself at this level and is well deserved to be the number 1 person in the Dao generation. Zhou Daocheng also made no concessions. Although his momentum was less fierce, it was vast, thick, and endless. Daobai Daocheng, your strength. The second elder's eyes widened sharply, his eyes full of disbelief, and he felt awkward speaking for a while. Zhou Daocheng said calmly, since the family has entrusted this task to us, there is no reason to back down. I also ask all uncles to go all out. All the members of the hunting team couldn't help but swallow their saliva and silently looked at these 2 juniors with the word, Dao, unable to accept it for a while. They never expected that the children of the Dao generation would actually reach such a level of strength, even comparable to the family elders. This also made them feel ashamed. The Shuzi generation was really embarrassed. They were not as good as those above and even worse than those below. However, the two took the initiative to reveal their strength. It also significantly improved morale. The second elder, Zhou Chengping, was shocked, but also showed a satisfied smile, and said, yes, there is finally hope for the Zhou family. Then why don't you tell me what you think about this rescue activity? Zhou Daocheng pondered for a moment, and he did have a countermeasure in his mind to deal with such a method of encircling Wei and rescuing Zhao. But the world of cultivating immortals is ultimately different from mortal combat, and the methods used are naturally different. We can only learn from its principles, but cannot completely imitate them. After thinking for a long time, he said, Second Elder, now the Ma family and the Chen family are waiting for us to surrender. We must not act according to their wishes. We must take the initiative to break the deadlock. What are you going to do? Their purpose is to let us break in and save people, so we will do the opposite. Instead of saving people, we will directly attack the opponent's 9th level Qi refining powerhouse with our numerical advantage. Zhou Daocheng's eyes darkened and he analyzed carefully. When the time comes, they will definitely provide support, and the surrounding formation will be in chaos, and the people of Ironwood Mountain will be able to take advantage of the chaos and leave. Okay. The second elder Zhou Chengping said 3 words, good, in a row, which was enough to show his satisfaction. These 2 juniors really gave him a big surprise. It's really a good idea to break the situation by force and retaliate with the other party's own way. Then act according to Daocheng's plan. The second elder contacted the inside of Ironwood Mountain and got in touch successfully, and the situation he got was much better than expected. The 6 9th level Qi refining experts surrounded and refused to attack. They just blocked all the exit channels and did not really take action. This also made everyone feel relieved, but they couldn't help but feel doubtful. Is the other party really so confident that they can guarantee that they will catch them all in one fell swoop? This was too conceited, which made Zhou Daocheng a little wary. But now the arrow is on the string and must be fired, and the rescue operation must be launched. After the 2 parties contacted each other, the second elder began to ask about the situation of the encirclement. Only by knowing the distribution of the opponent's 9th level Qi refining experts can he make better choices and target them. However, judging from the last information obtained, Zhou Chengyuan and others did not know the specific location of the other party. The only thing that was certain was that there were 2 strong men at the 9th level of Qi refining at the main entrance, and the others were scattered in hidden alleys. The second elder made an immediate decision based on the information he received. Directly besieging the 2 strong men at the 9th level of Qi refining on the main mountain road, this is the most unexpected position of the opponent, and the position and number of people are the most clear. However, Zhou Chengyuan and others rejected the idea of escape directly from other directions, and planned to directly cooperate from inside and outside. While breaking through the encirclement, they might be able to kill a few of the 9th level of Qi refining. The second elder considered that Zhou Daobai and Zhou Daocheng were not weak. They were equivalent to 5 people at the 9th level of Qi refining. Even if there was an accident in the plan, they would be able to make up for it, so they agreed. The planned time was chosen in the early morning. The sky has just turned over, the blue-gray sky seems to be covered with a layer of haze, and the mountains are shrouded in thick fog. The footsteps rubbed against the leaves, making a faint, rustling sound that echoed through the woods. 3 figures were like ghosts, walking quickly towards the direction of Ironwood Mountain. The Ironwood Mountain, shrouded in darkness, under the seemingly calm surface, is also stirring up waves. Dozens of figures have gathered, ready to rush down the mountain at any time. Zhou Daocheng looked calmly and cautiously towards Ironwood Mountain. In order to ensure the success of the operation, they only arranged for 3 people to take action, while the rest of the hunting team members were outside to support them. When they got closer, they could sense 2 people stationed at the mountain crossing from a distance, sitting cross-legged on the rocks with their eyes closed and meditating. The 2 people have strong auras and are both wearing the clothes of the Chen family. They should be the 9th level Qi refining experts of the Chen family. Zhou Chengping looked at the 2 men with a sharp and fierce look, as if he wanted to eat them alive. It was understandable that the second elder was so angry. If it weren't for the collusion between the Chen family and the Ma family, the family would never have fallen into the current danger. Moreover, although there were frictions between the Zhou family and the Chen family, the contradictions were far less than those of the Ma family, but the other party acted like this, almost forcing the Zhou family to death. Even until now, everyone was puzzled as to why the Chen family would target the Zhou family. To seize the Blackwood Mountain, or driven by interests. In any case, the hatred between the 2 sides has been formed. Take action and destroy these 2 Chen family fools. The second elder Zhou Chengping took the lead in taking action, and the momentum of the great perfection of Qi training burst out, rushing towards the two people with a swift posture, leaving them no room for reaction. The Chen family cultivators were quite powerful. They opened their eyes at the first time and drew out the magic weapon for defense at the fastest speed. Obviously, the two were extremely vigilant. However, the second elder was stronger after all. Although the foundation building pill did not allow him to break through the foundation building stage, it gave him the combat power of the 9th level of chi refining. With a slash of the sword, one of them was directly chopped dozens of meters away and crashed directly into the stone steps behind him. Without giving the opponent any chance to react, Zhou Daobai followed closely and attacked. The extremely sharp sword edge rolled up bright sword flowers in the dark night. The opponent was defeated for a while, and his left shoulder blade was immediately pierced, splashing a piece of blood in the air. With a roar, the Chen family cultivator carried his injured body and forced himself to retreat, and rationally sent a message to seek support signals. Zhou Daocheng's heart tightened, knowing that he had to fight quickly. With his eyes focused, Zhou Daocheng no longer held back his hands. The magic power of Wutu condensed between his fingers, formation patterns on the ground emerged, and a thick aura covered the surrounding area. The next moment, a huge thorn vine burst out of the ground, attacking the Chen family monk from behind at a tricky angle, and the powerful force directly knocked it away. Good chance. Zhou Daobai and Zhou Chengping's eyes lit up at the same time, and they instantly caught each other's flaws. Almost at the same time, the two took action at the same time. It's the formation. Mad, you want to kill me, it's too easy for you. The Chen family monk roared angrily, took out a shield weapon, and quickly retreated back. Then at this moment, there was another huge roar in the other two directions. Boom, boom, two huge thorn vines appeared again. Their thick bodies blocked the way and surrounded them from three directions, blocking all escape routes. Poof, the sharp sword pierced the body. The blood reflected the red on the clothes, and a slightly frightened scream sounded, "Help me." Everything happened in a flash of lightning, and in just a few breaths, the Chen family monk was in a desperate situation under the siege of three people. Another older monk from the Chen family, his eyes dark as water, said coldly, "Hold on, support will arrive soon, none of them can leave." The second elder was full of energy and shouted domineeringly, "Then let's see whose support arrives first. You and I have no grievances at all, but they actually colluded with the Ma family to besiege my Zhou family, so be prepared to die." Quote. Compared to the support from the Ma family and the Chen family, the Zhou family members had already rushed down the mountain before the battle started. It was obvious at a glance whether they were familiar or slow. Zhou Daocheng had already sensed the sound of footsteps coming from the mountain, and there were two extremely powerful 9th level breaths of qi refining. It was his grandfather Zhou Chengyuan and 5th elder Zhou Chenghai. If there are no accidents, there is a high probability that this battle will be a complete victory, and even several elders of the opponent's 9th level of qi refining will be killed. This made him secretly sigh that the other party had misjudged the strength of the Zhou family after all. The most important point when encircling a point and calling for reinforcements is that the strength and number of people besieging must be far greater than the people being besieged. Otherwise, the current situation would occur. The strong men of the Zhou family cooperated internally and externally to break through the encirclement from one point, and instantly defeated them without the ability to fight back. Zhou Daocheng was extremely relaxed, freely controlling the thorns and vines and waving them continuously, mainly to contain them, causing great trouble to the enemy on the narrow mountain roads. Soon, the footsteps on the mountain became more and more obvious, and the two Chen family monks who were besieged turned pale, as if they had seen their own fate. At this moment, they no longer seek victory, they just want to leave alive. But Zhou Daocheng had already blocked all the roads and surrounded them. Since they like to gather around points for reinforcements, use this trick and use it on them as well. After a few breaths, Zhou Chengyuan and the others arrived from the top of the mountain. They couldn't help but be shocked when they saw the one-sided battle situation. Feeling the auras of Zhou Daobai and Zhou Daocheng felt even more unreal. However, Zhou Chenghai was not too surprised when he saw Zhou Daobai's strength. He had obviously known the situation for a long time. After all, he was his grandson. If Zhou Daobai could hide it from others, he could not hide it from his own grandfather. Zhou Chengping smiled and said, "It seems that this plan is going well. The Ma family and the Chen family want to plot against my Zhou family. They are really overestimating their capabilities. Second brother, don't be careless. Leave here as soon as possible to avoid accidents. Zhou Chengyuan has a more calm personality and is unwilling to take risks. Zhou Daobai showed his sharp edge, flicked the blood on his sword, and said coldly, don't you need to continue to expand the results? These two people have been surrounded. Use this as bait to attract more Ma family members and Chen family members, and give them a fatal blow. In response, Zhou Chengyuan glanced at the two people in the formation and was secretly shocked by the strength of these two grandchildren. However, after thinking for a moment, he still said conservatively, don't be greedy. After killing these two people, return to the family immediately. Keep the overall situation in mind. Zhou Chengping also nodded. Chang Yuan is right, the Ma family and the Chen family have big plans, so be careful in everything. Kill these two people first. No, be careful. Before the second elder finished speaking, he roared fiercely. Immediately afterwards, an explosive roar erupted instantly, and the terrifying power kicked up a large amount of dust, blocking everyone's sight. What happened? Zhou Daocheng covered his ears, the only doubt left in his mind. Even with his terrifying perception ability, he didn't react at the moment. Everything happened too fast. As the strongest being present, the second elder reacted immediately and stood in front of everyone. However, the next moment, only an angry scream was heard. Second elder, Changping, second grandpa. ... Anxious calls rang out, but there was only a roar, quickly go. There is a strong foundation builder. As the rising smoke dispersed, the scene in front of them made everyone's pupils shrink, and a bad feeling arose in their hearts. I saw the second elder flying backwards and being pierced through the chest by a sharp spear. A large amount of blood spurted out. His white hair was messy and his pupils were bloodshot. He covered his chest tightly with both hands, but he still couldn't stop breathing. Got to be sluggish. Before anyone could step forward, they felt an even more terrifying aura coming from behind. The floating dust dissipated, and a figure with steady steps slowly walked over, with 3 spears on his back flashing with metal sharpness, exactly the same as the one that pierced the second elder's chest. When Zhou Chengyuan saw this person, his face instantly became gloomy, and he almost gritted his teeth and said, Chen. Family. Old. Ancestor. The moment Zhou Daocheng saw this person, he felt goosebumps all over his body, as if a sharp arrow was pointing at his eyebrows. Being able to defeat the second elder in one move, everyone more or less guessed the other party's strength, but when they really knew his identity, they still took a breath. The ancestor of the Chen family, Chen Jiaonian, is a strong man at the 3rd level of foundation building, and is not weaker than the ancestor of the Zhou family, Zhou Yonghan. A calm and hoarse voice slowly sounded in everyone's ears. The Zhou family's young generation is not bad, especially the Dao generation, but it's a pity, you all have to die today. Everyone's face was gloomy, staring at the old man in front of them. They never thought that the Chen family was so determined that they directly sent out a foundation-building strongman. Zhou Chengyuan looked at this person for a long time and said in a deep voice, you are a foundation-building cultivator. Is it not appropriate to besiege our qi-refining young generation? Hee, don't use these etiquette and morality to bind me. How can my old face compare to the rise and fall of the family? Chen Jiaonian just laughed twice, then walked forward, and his right hand had already touched the spear behind him again. Hurry up, this person is cruel and will kill all of you. The second elder's teeth were about to crack, and the veins on his neck were bulging. He stood in front of everyone again despite his injuries. Second elder, Zhou Daocheng couldn't help shouting. The spear had completely penetrated his body, and blood flowed along the tip of the spear like a stream, accumulating a pool of blood on the ground. Hearing the call, the second elder Zhou Chengping did not turn back. Perhaps he was powerless to turn back, but just said lightly, I am the strongest and the oldest. I can barely hold you up for a while, you, go. Everyone present felt as if a huge stone was pressing on their hearts, and they felt heavy breathing and almost suffocated. Old man, are you still pretending to be a hero before you die? I will kill them one by one in front of you. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you that the group of fools you arranged outside. I have already dealt with them. After these words fell, Zhou Chengping's pupils shrank suddenly, and the air seemed to solidify at this moment. 3 seconds later, a heart-wrenching roar sounded. Why? Why? They are only at the 7th or 8th level of chi refining. You are a powerful foundation building expert. Why did you kill them? Why? Faces recalled in his mind, his brothers, his descendants, his sons, every face that shared life and death, became clearer and clearer, but gradually blurred. Not only them, your Zhou family, more people will die. Chen Jiaonian's cold voice fell. But in the next moment, the second elder Zhou Chengping's eyes suddenly became firm, as if he had made a decision. No longer caring about the injury on his chest, he rushed forward like a madman. Go. Run away. Zhou Daocheng clenched his fists tightly and clenched his teeth. This was the first time he felt despair. But after only hesitating for 0.1 seconds, he knew that it was impossible to do anything. This time the Zhou family was doomed, and the foundation building experts were not something they could fight against, so he immediately turned around and ran wildly. The gap between the chi refining stage and the foundation building stage is an insurmountable gap. Not only Zhou Daocheng, but also the others were like this. Even though they were sad, this matter concerned the survival of the family, and it was not something that could be solved by sadness. Too many people had died, and the death of Zhou Chengping was serious enough. They could not die again, otherwise the Zhou family would collapse like a building and be destroyed. Even Zhou Chengyuan and Zhou Chenghai were unable to take care of the ordinary clansmen behind them. Under the current circumstances, even the 9th level strong men in the refining period could hardly escape, let alone those weaker clansmen. Only Zhou Chengyuan, Zhou Chenghai, Zhou Daobai, and Zhou Daocheng rushed out at the first time to seize the last chance of survival. For the first time, Zhou Daocheng tried his best, and the Wu Earth spiritual energy in his body was released instantly. He ran at the fastest speed, and fine sweat appeared on his forehead. The sense of danger in his heart did not decrease at all. He kept thinking in his mind, what means could change the status quo? Golden Vine Formation, Splitting Gold Formation. It was not until this moment that he realized that he had too few means, and there was not a single one that could really be used as a trump card. Under the suppression of absolute strength, he was still a lamb to be slaughtered, and no matter how hard everyone struggled, they could not make any waves. While thinking, Zhou Daocheng suddenly discovered that his grandfather Zhou Chengyuan was running wildly behind him. Zhou Daocheng was so angry that he couldn't help shouting, "Grandpa, you are stupid. Run separately." Zhou Chengyuan didn't care about Zhou Daocheng's dirty words, he just smiled and said, "It's okay, it's safe to run together." Safety. Zhou Daocheng's face turned green, but he glanced and found that the same situation happened not far away. The 5th elder Zhou Chenghai followed Zhou Daobai in the same way. In an instant, Zhou Daocheng understood what the two elders meant. At this moment, an inexplicable emotion rose from the depths of his heart, rushing straight to the top of his head, giving him goosebumps all over his body. It is the bond from blood, at the last moment of life and death, the protection of the inheritance of future generations. This is also a grandfather's resolute protection for his own children. Grandpa, no need to say more, bring all your talents, formations you have learned, and secrets back to the Zhou family. You hope, if you die, the Zhou family will really be cut off. Zhou Daocheng felt heavy in his heart. He had to admit that the two elders were more rational. Facing the pursuit of the foundation building masters, even if the soldiers fled in 4 directions, it was still difficult to escape. There was no need to chase them. Just 4 spears were enough to nail the 4 people to death without any room for resistance. At this time, a cold and indifferent voice sounded behind him. "Since I am here today, how can I let you leave?" A golden light shone in the night sky, and at the moment of dawn, it flew in the most gorgeous way, but it did not bring hope. Daocheng, go. Zhou Chengyuan was prepared and slapped Zhou Daocheng on the back without hesitation. I saw a second-level inferior talisman being activated, forming a light golden defense shield, which instantly wrapped Zhou Daocheng and slapped him out. The spear pierced through the body with a bang, and even a strong man at the 9th level of chi refining had no chance to resist. With a loud bang, the spear and the body were nailed into the stone wall. Puff, bang, the metal pierced the body and then stimulated the hard rock, making a clear sound. At this moment, the whole world was quiet. Zhou Daocheng only felt his heart twitching violently and his whole body was numb, but there was no sadness. Watching this scene quietly, his heart was surprisingly calm. Sadness, anger, and fear seemed to disappear at this moment, or perhaps they did not disappear, but were deeply hidden, leaving only the desire to survive. I want to live. Zhou Daocheng came back to his senses, clenched his teeth, and released the golden vine formation in his hand quickly the moment he landed. Then, he grabbed Zhou Daobai beside him, and then controlled 3 thorny vines to whip himself fiercely. The 2 people who had just landed flew thousands of meters away again in an instant. This was the fastest way he could think of to escape from here. But even so, the 2 still did not dare to relax their vigilance. For the foundation building strongman, chasing the 2 chi refining juniors was like an adult chasing a child. Even if they ran thousands of meters, they could easily catch up. The 2 ran all the way, and could only hope that the other party would not deliberately chase them. But the next moment, the 2 suddenly stopped and looked at the person in front of them in despair. The ancestor of the Ma family. Ma Hongtu, 2 foundation building. At this moment, Zhou Daocheng's mind was almost blank, and a sense of despair surged in his heart, and it became more and more intense. It was not until this moment that he figured out all the problems. Why did the 6 chi refining 9-layer masters surround but not attack? Why were they so confidently waiting for the Zhou family to rescue? Why could their own plan be implemented so smoothly without any defense from the other party? The other party's plan may never have loopholes, because they really sent out a force far beyond the Zhou family to ensure that nothing would be lost. Perhaps from the beginning to the end, the Zhou family never had the possibility of success. Even when they approached Tiamu Mountain for the first time, all traces had already been revealed in the eyes of the foundation building masters. 6th brother, I will cover the rear, you go first. Zhou Daocheng smiled bitterly. Don't cover the rear, the 2 of us together are not enough to slap them. Ma Hongtu looked at the 2 indifferently and said coldly, haha, no one needs to be humble. Chen Jiaonian let you go, but I, Ma Hongtu, will not die. Almost without a word of nonsense, Ma Hongtu took a step forward, and in just a moment, he was only a few meters away from the 2, without even a chance to react. Feeling the breath of death coming towards him, Zhou Daocheng had already grasped the gold-splitting formation in his hand. Even if he died, he had to make a final effort. At this critical moment, a cold voice came from a distance. Ma Hongtu, take action against 2 juniors, do you think my Zhou family has no one? Zhou Yonghan, Zhou Daobai and Zhou Daocheng also raised their heads suddenly and looked in the direction of the sound in surprise. They saw an old man walking from a distance, blocking the 2 of them as quickly as possible, and withstood Ma Hongtu's attack. 3rd uncle, clan leader. Surprise appeared on Zhou Daocheng's face, but the joy did not last long before it turned into thinking. Are the Chen family and the Ma family really planning this just for an Ironwood mountain and a few family elders at the 9th level of chi refining? At this moment, another terrifying foundation building aura came from behind, slowly approaching here. Chen Jiaonian, the ancestor of the Chen family, walked calmly from a distance with a spear stained with blood in his hand. This scene made Zhou Daocheng feel nervous. When the other party appears here, he naturally knows what will happen to the 2nd elder Zhou Chengping, the 5th elder Zhou Chenghai, and his grandfather Zhou Chengyuan. Inexplicable emotions were brewing in my heart, and my heart felt like it was being suppressed by a huge jack, making me unable to breathe for a long time. Even if there are thousands of emotions, they will only turn into helplessness in the end. Zhou Yonghan, you actually dared to come here. It seems you want to stay here today. Ma Hongtu said coldly. Zhou Yonghan's eyes were deep, with a dangerous light flashing in his eyes, and he said, isn't this your arrangement just to lure me out? Ha ha ha. Ma Hongtu raised his head and laughed, and then a sinister look appeared on his face. Since you know this and still dare to come here, then stay here forever. As soon as he finished speaking, Ma Hongtu held out a pair of golden iron rings. With a powerful momentum like a rainbow, he flew directly forward. His speed was difficult to see with the naked eye. Zhou Yonghan snorted coldly, flipped his right hand, and a bracelet magic weapon appeared, forming a light blue protective halo, blocking the 3 people. Following the violent sound and violent collision, Ma Hongtu stopped and flew backwards to count to 10, with a trace of surprise in his eyes. As expected of the weapon refining family, such a powerful defensive weapon. Both of them used 2nd level magic weapons, which were extremely powerful, but Zhou Yonghan's bracelet was obviously stronger. And in terms of value, defensive magic weapons are more precious than offensive magic weapons, and they are more difficult to buy on the market. If you don't have a deep foundation, it is difficult to own them. After Zhou Yonghan blocked the blow, he immediately picked up Zhou Daocheng and Zhou Daobai as quickly as possible and ran towards the family without any thoughts of fighting. Now that you're here, why leave so quickly? A gloomy voice sounded from behind. Although Ma Hongtu did not completely stop Zhou Yonghan, he also delayed time for Chen Jiaonian behind him. The even more terrifying spear weapon was like a swift golden lightning, flying towards him at an extremely tricky angle. Zhou Yonghan's face was ugly, and he knew clearly in his heart that the strength of these two people was not weaker than him, especially Chen Jiaonian of the Chen family, and was even slightly stronger than himself. It would be difficult for him to escape unscathed today. Sensing the attack behind him, Zhou Yonghan gritted his teeth. A halo appeared on the bracelet in his hand, forming a protective shield behind him. Apart from that, he never made any defensive moves, but further accelerated his pace and rushed towards the family's direction. The quality of the spear magic weapon reached the second level mid-level, and it was a full blow from a foundation building expert. It was far from being comparable to Mahontu's attack. The protective shield formed by the bracelet only lasted for a few seconds before it was broken by the violent force. Poof! Just listen to the sharp spearhead, unstoppably penetrate the skin and muscles, bring out a bloody splash, and spatter on Zhou Daocheng's face. Zhou Yonghan took a breath, but showed no signs of stopping. Instead, he continued to flee, and his pace accelerated a bit. Behind him, Chen Jiaonian's cold voice sounded, "Don't let him run away. If we deal with him, the Zhou family won't have anything to fear." Haha, after waiting for him for so long, how could you let him go so easily? It was not until this moment that Zhou Daocheng understood the trap set by the two major families. The real purpose may not be Mr. Zhang at the 9th level of qi refining, but the head of the Zhou family. Feeling the powerful aura coming from behind, Zhou Yonghan's heart sank, knowing that in such a situation, it would be almost impossible to return to the family safely. After thinking for a moment, he suddenly exerted force with his hands and threw the two people in his hands directly away. He said calmly, "Go home and report the situation truthfully. Cheng Yi knows what to do." The sound became farther and farther, and Zhou Daocheng only knew that he was thrown into a perfect parabola in the air, flew over dozens of mountains in a row, and hit the ground with a thud. But he was wearing a turtle shell, and had no other advantages. He had a terrifyingly strong defense. He bounced on the ground several times without any injuries on his body. On the contrary, Zhou Daobai on the side was so dizzy that he was stunned for a long time and did not react. Zhou Daocheng knew that the situation was urgent and he would have no chance if he didn't escape, so he grabbed his elder brother and started running desperately. His heart was extremely depressed, as if he was being suppressed by a huge boulder. He knew that after today, the strength of the Zhou family would definitely plummet, and if things got worse, it would be impossible for them to be destroyed from now on. Everything happened so fast, and he was still planning to develop Balin Lake in the valley with peace of mind, but the disaster happened suddenly, catching him by surprise. Gritting his teeth, Zhou Daocheng had a lot of thoughts in his mind. If he was given a few more years, both his strength and formation attainments would be able to reach a higher level, which would be enough to avoid today's disaster. It might even take a few years. If he could refine a first-class formation, he might be able to turn the gears of fate and change everything today. Unfortunately, there is no if. Until this moment, when he saw a family leader die in front of him and the family was facing the crisis of overthrow, inexplicable emotions took root in his heart and intensified, like a nightmare spreading to every corner of his heart. Zhou Daocheng knew that this emotion was called hatred. How could the hatred of exterminating the clan and slaughtering the clan members not be engraved in his heart? However, no matter how complicated the emotions in his heart were, there was only one way in front of him: escape. The Wu-Tu spiritual energy cultivated by Wu-Tu Kun Yu Gong burst out with terrifying endurance, which was several times the mana of the same level cultivators, supporting Zhou Daocheng to run wildly. From day to night, and from night to dawn. Almost tireless, even Zhou Daobai's legs trembled when he ran, and for a while he couldn't tell who was at the 9th level of qi refining. After running for a whole week, the two of them stopped to rest when they were close to the family area. However, they only rested for a quarter of an hour, took some drugs to recover their strength, and then rushed to the family again. It took them only 7 days to complete the journey of more than 10 days, and they almost broke into the family hall exhausted. Family. Patriarch, Tiamu Mountain is a trap, hiding 2 foundation building masters. Except for us, all the troops were annihilated. The clan leader stopped the 2 foundation building masters, and his life and death are uncertain. Zhou Daocheng described the situation as quickly as possible. Boom. What? Zhou Chengyi stood up suddenly, his face changing expression, his eyes mixed with shock, anger, disbelief, and grief. 5 minutes later, the melodious bell sounded throughout Tianqi Mountain. At the critical moment of family overthrow, all Zhou family members were summoned to prepare for the worst outcome. The 2 teams left Tianqi Mountain and rushed towards Sifangfang City and Luwanfang City, informing the elders of those 2 stations about the family situation and gathering the family's power at the same time. Because the family's next goal will no longer be development and expansion, but to maintain family inheritance. At the foot of Tianqi Mountain, hundreds of thousands of Zhou family mortals began to migrate on a large scale under the protection of immortal cultivators. Mortals are the foundation of a family. Without a large number of mortals, there would be no generations of immortal cultivators. So at the first opportunity, the head of the family issued an order to move all mortal monks to Deep Forest Mountain. Deep Forest Mountain, where Zhou Daocheng accidentally discovered that the family was slaughtered by evil cultivators, has now been occupied by the Zhou family. Although there is only one first-order mid-grade spiritual vein there, the location is hidden enough, hidden in the dense mountain forest, and it is an unknown location. Transferring a group of clan members can also be regarded as preserving the fire to prevent the Zhou family from being destroyed in Tianqi Mountain. A large number of people from the Zhou family, including the Chong, Shou, and Dao families, were also going together. Everyone in the family went to the Deep Forest Mountain with the common people. Nowadays, Tianqi Mountain has become a living target, unable to resist the invasion of the other 2 foundation building families. Moreover, since the Ma family and the Chen family have reached this level and directly broke out to fight in the foundation building period, they must be ready to exterminate the Zhou family. Naturally, Zhou Chengyi will not have any luck. Even if the clan leader returns safely, if any accident occurs, the Zhou family will directly cut off the foundation building inheritance, and a century-old foundation will be destroyed. As for Tianqi Mountain, there is a high probability that it cannot be defended. The head of the family, Zhou Chengyi, calmly made arrangements and began to seek a way out for the future of the family. In the past, the family had a total of 4 locations, namely Tianqi Mountain, Timushan, Sifangfang City Beiki Pavilion, and Luwanfang City Weapon Pavilion. These are all official bases, but they are no longer safe and are likely to be besieged by the Ma and Chen families. Therefore, he immediately issued an order to sell the shop as much as possible in exchange for spiritual stones and cultivation resources to be returned to the family. At least for a while, family members cannot go out at will and need to hide. At present, there are only 2 family residences that are still hidden and unknown to outsiders. That is Deep Forest Mountain and Balin Lake. These are the 2 places that the Zhou family has chosen to move to now. However, Balin Lake is too far away and the island is too small, making it not suitable for large-scale relocation. Therefore, the main target is still Deep Forest Mountain. Zhou Daocheng and Zhou Daobai did not return to Balin Lake, but participated in the migration of the tribe. Zhou Daocheng is stationed in Deep Forest Mountain and serves as the family elder. While ensuring the safety of his clan members, he will also expel the monsters around Deep Forest Mountain. Zhou Daobai is mainly responsible for escorting. In order to prevent the whereabouts from being leaked, he can only transfer in small quantities many times and hide the whereabouts of the people in time. This is an extremely huge amount of work. The entire Zhou family is quickly hiding from the bright side to the dark side, trying to survive this huge crisis that is rare in a century. 10 days have passed. All Zhou family cultivators have moved to Deep Forest Mountain, and more than 40,000 ordinary mortals have also moved. The shops in Sifangfang City and Luwanfang City all sell them at low prices, and they purchase a large amount of cultivation resources and send them to Deep Forest Mountain. Tianqi Mountain has been almost evacuated, leaving only the family head and a few others, waiting for the clan leader to return. At the most depressing moment in the family atmosphere, Zhou Yonghan, the head of the Zhou family, finally lived up to expectations and returned to Tianqi Mountain. Just after returning to Tianqi Mountain, before seeing anyone, he immediately rushed into the cave at the Eye of Lingquan. This once again cast a shadow over everyone's minds. Everyone knew that facing the siege of the two foundation building experts, even if they didn't die, they probably wouldn't be able to escape intact. And the next order from the head of the family also confirmed everyone's guesses. The relocation of all clan members will continue. Fully gather the family power, strictly prohibit going out, and stick to the deep forest mountains. This almost confirms the current situation of the family. Even if the patriarch comes back safely, this disaster cannot be completely solved. There are only 3 people left on the top of Tianqi Mountain, the head of the family Zhou Chengyi, the 4th elder Zhou Chengyan, and the 6th elder Zhou Chengguang. These are the only 3 elders of the Chang generation left. They all have gloomy faces, and the gloom in their eyes cannot be dissipated for a long time. Brother, how is third uncle doing? Zhou Chengyi's face was ashen and his voice was hoarse as he said, he is seriously injured and his life is approaching. Just 8 words once again tightened everyone's heart, bringing a sense of depressive suffocation. The patriarch's life is short. This time he endured the siege of 2 strong foundation builders. Although he managed to survive with the strength of his magic weapon, he was only at the end of his efforts. Zhou Chengyan said anxiously, "Don't we still have spiritual stones left in our family? Hurry up and buy healing elixirs and life-extending resources. As long as the patriarch can hold on, our Tianqi Mountain Zhou family will still stand strong." Chong Yan is right. With the current situation of the family, we must not lose the clan elder, otherwise. HMPH. Stupid. An extremely weak cold snort came from the depths of Tianqi behind. Even if I can hold on, how many more years can I hold on? 10 years, 20 years, or 50 years? Clan leader. Third uncle. Uncle third, why did you come out? Quote. The 3 of them did not scold him again and hurriedly stepped forward to help him, but Zhou Yonghan waved his hand and pushed him away. At this moment, the last member of the Yang generation of the Zhou family, his face is getting older and paler, his breath is sluggish, and he is as erratic as a candle in the wind. A weak voice sounded, "We, Yangzi generation, have supported this family for hundreds of years. Third uncle, I have supported this family for too long. Now that my life is approaching, it is a cycle of nature. How can it be changed by human power? Now that the family has encountered such a catastrophe, this is both a crisis and an opportunity. Ahem, it is said that your Chong generation has prospered and produced many elders at the 9th level of qi refining. Now it is time for you to take responsibility." 4th elder Zhou Chengyan lowered his head, his eyes twinkling like a child's, and said reluctantly, "Third uncle, how can we afford it? The family cannot live without you." If it were normal, Zhou Yonghan might have hit him with a mallet, scolded the unlucky child for having no spine, and even fined him a solitary confinement. But this time, Zhou Yonghan forced a smile on his pale face and sighed, "Who has not been born as a child? There is no first time for anything. There must be someone to bear the burden of the family, maybe you, maybe it's the descendants." Speaking of this, the old team leader seemed to have thought of something. After a moment of silence, he said softly, "If you are sure, then rush forward and carry the Zhou family for the next 100 years. If you are not sure, leave the opportunity to Daobai and Daocheng. Just use your old lives to pave a way for them." The 3 of them were all in high spirits. They had never thought that the clan leader would speak so highly of the 2 of them. The head of the family, Zhou Chengyi, frowned slightly and took the initiative to say, "Clan leader, I know the situation of this child Daobai. He has been keeping a low profile for these years. He is actually a genius with 2 spiritual roots. He is even more talented than Zhao Yunji. Now he has reached the 9th level of qi refining. Layer is indeed the most suitable person in the family to break through the foundation. But this kid Daocheng, patriarch, do you think so highly of him?" Zhou Yonghan smiled and shook his head, saying, "This kid Daocheng is hiding very deep. Even we have been deceived by him in these years. He has now reached the 8th level of qi refining, and his strength is not even weaker than the 9th level of qi refining, and he should be hiding other secrets. If the family is really on the verge of destruction, he may be a hope." Quote. The fourth elder Zhou Chengyan and the sixth elder Zhou Chengguang suddenly widened their eyes as they listened to the conversation between the family head and the clan leader. The elders are completely unaware of the secrets of these clans. Dao Bai is the second spirit root. Have you reached the 9th level of qi refining? Dao Cheng also has the strength of the 8th level of qi refining. No matter in which era, such talent is enough to give a glimpse of the foundation building style, and it is no less than the patriarch Zhou Yonghan. At this moment, they couldn't help but sigh. They all said that their Chong generation was highly talented, but at this time, compared with the Dao generation, they were not at the same level at all. But this kind of information is like a shot in the arm, rekindling hope for the two people who were already desperate. Especially Zhou Daobai's talent and strength. As a 9th level qi refining expert with 2 spiritual roots, as long as he obtains the foundation establishment pill, he can achieve a breakthrough with almost 100% success. This means that a strong foundation builder may once again appear in the family, taking over the torch from the old patriarch and leading the Zhou family for the next 100 years. As for Zhou Daocheng, he was weaker in their eyes. After all, from their perspective, breaking through the foundation building was already a lifelong goal. It is even the only goal of the tribesmen of all generations. Ahem. Zhou Yonghan coughed twice, his weak body shook slightly, and blood overflowed from the hole pierced by a spear in his chest. Suddenly, the other 3 people felt as if they were facing a formidable enemy and hurriedly took out a large amount of pills. Zhou Yonghan waved his hand. There is no need to waste the pills. Before I die, Chengyi, you can move your family as soon as possible. Maybe, we really should leave Tianqi Mountain. The other 3 were silent, and no one wanted to leave their ancestral land, but the facts did not force them to make this decision. Zhou Chengyi was silent for a moment and said, Clan Chief, without your protection, there is a high probability that Tianqi Mountain cannot be defended. I plan to destroy the Lingquan Eye and take it to the deep forest mountain. Just do it. If it is destroyed, it will be destroyed. If it is not broken, how can it be established again? Nearing the end of his life, the old man became more open-minded. Relocating the Lingquan Eye does not mean moving the entire Lingquan Eye. This is an impossible task. What Zhou Chengyi said about migrating the Lingquan Eye was to use the method of fishing in the dry lake to directly break open the entire cave and take out all the Lingquan liquid in the Lingquan Eye. This will directly cause the spiritual spring to dry up and lose spirituality. Even if the spirit spring liquid taken away is moved to the deep forest mountain, it cannot be turned into a new spirit spring eye again. Instead, it can be poured on the original spirit veins to improve the quality of the spirit veins to a certain extent. According to estimates, the spiritual veins of deep forest mountain can be barely upgraded to the 2nd level low-grade level. This is equivalent to transforming a 2nd-order high-grade spiritual spring eye into a 2nd-order low-grade spiritual vein. Among them, the loss was almost no less than 100,000 low-grade spiritual stones. This was not only cutting off the flesh of the Zhou family, but also digging into the roots of the Zhou family, severely cutting off a piece of the foundation that had existed for thousands of years. But at this point, they had no other choice. Zhou Chengyi was extremely decisive. On that day, with everyone's distressed eyes on him, he directly chopped up Tianqi Mountain and used a 2nd-level low-grade magic weapon, the Jade Spirit Box, to take away all the spiritual spring liquid. By the way, they also took away the blue veins from the bottom of Tianqi. The quantity was very large and had been accumulated over the past several hundred years. There are a total of 9 pieces of 2nd-order low-grade products, more than 50 yuan of 1st-order high-grade products, and more than 300 yuan of 1st-order mid-grade products. Now that the family has lost Ironwood Mountain, its weapon refining resources are extremely scarce. This batch of bluestone can just fill in the gap and maintain the family's future development. Afterwards, Zhou Chengyi didn't let go of anything that could be taken away from Tianqi Mountain, including the only 1 acre of 2nd-level lower-grade spiritual fields, which he packed in storage bags and took away. As for the other things that couldn't be taken away, they were all destroyed. And that night, the 4 of them also left Tianqi Mountain and rushed to the hidden deep forest mountain. In just half a month, the prosperous Tianqi Tianzhou family ceased to exist and completely disappeared from everyone's eyes. Tianqi Mountain, which once looked like a fairyland, now looks desolate and dilapidated. The lack of spiritual energy has caused the surrounding trees to wither. The fog formed by the spiritual energy gradually disappears and gradually turns into an ordinary mountain. The next morning, the monks from the Ma family and the Chen family rushed to Tianqi Mountain under the leadership of the two foundation-building patriarchs. What was left to them was a Tianqi Mountain that had been evacuated. Except for the buildings that had been knocked down and the spiritual spring that had been chopped off the top of the mountain, there was nothing else. At the bottom of the mountain, more than half of the mortals of the Zhou family have moved away, leaving only a few villages with tens of thousands of mortals living in them. Seeing this scene, everyone's faces were livid and their eyes were filled with anger. No one wants to spend so much energy only to end up with an empty mountain. Not only did all the Zhou family members leave, but there was no resource left, which reduced their gains by more than 80%. Asshole, Zhou Yonghan, you were really bold. You actually destroyed the entire Tianqi Mountain. Ma Hongtu's eyes were fierce, and a dangerous light flashed. In anger, he didn't care about anything and slapped his palm wildly, instantly hitting the mortal village. Rumble, bang, the building collapsed immediately, and the mortals in cloth were beaten into meat paste. Crying, begging, and screaming were mixed together. The candlelight burned the house and a raging flame rose. This scene scared Chen Jiaonian and the Chen family monks on the side. Ma Hongtu, what are you doing? Chen Jiaonian shouted loudly and stopped Ma Hongtu. What should I do? Ma Hongtu asked back, with a sly smile on his face. Since the Zhou family won't leave us anything, then just slaughter all these mortals, which can be regarded as collecting some interest in advance. Chen Jiaonian's face was ugly. Obviously, he didn't expect that the people of the Ma family would be so crazy and dare to slaughter mortals wantonly, which was no different from the behavior of evil practitioners. For a moment, he was a little hesitant in his heart. He began to question whether the decision to cooperate with the Ma family was correct. What kind of things would such a cruel family do? No one knows. Fellow Taoist Ma, they are just ordinary people, why bother to slaughter them? The most important thing now is to find the hiding place of the Zhou family. Why do we need outsiders to interfere in the actions of our Ma family? Isn't fellow Taoist Chen a little too lenient? Chen Jiaonian's face suddenly became gloomy. Do you really want to go your own way? Chapter 91. So what? Ma Hongtu's eyes were sinister, and the atmosphere instantly froze. Haha, what Ma Daoyu did was really eye-opening. In this case, there is no need for our cooperation to continue. Terminate the cooperation. Ma Hongtu sneered. That's fine, Tiamu Mountain will be half for each of us, and the Ma and Chen families will not owe each other anything. Chen Jiaonian's face turned pale when he heard this. You are dreaming. It has been agreed before that Tiamu Mountain belongs to my Chen family. Do you want to go back on your word? Humph, before is before. Tianqi Mountain was emptied, leaving my Ma family with nothing. Am I working for you for nothing? Chen Jiaonian snorted coldly. The distribution has been agreed before. It is your own choice. Who can you blame for this? Ma Hongtu's face was gloomy. Are you really unwilling to give in? Aren't you afraid of turning against my Ma family? Regarding the matter of Tiamu Mountain, Chen has made up his mind. Ma Hongtu, I hope you will think twice before acting. After a few words from both sides, the atmosphere instantly froze and was as cold as ice. The cooperation between the two parties was not because of the good relationship between the Ma and Chen families, but for the same purpose. The Chen family had coveted Tiamu Mountain for many years, but had never been able to seize it, and had many frictions with the Zhou family, so when the Ma family found them to join forces, they agreed without hesitation. And their goal was only to seize Tiamu Mountain. As for the Ma family, they had already had a grudge against the Zhou family, and with the incident of Zhao Yunji as the fuse, they had long been at loggerheads. But now, after a few words, Ma Hongtu's true nature was revealed, and the relationship between the two sides instantly dropped to the freezing point. No one knew what the two talked about, but they only knew that in the end, the Ma family killed people and slaughtered mortals, and the Chen family left angrily and terminated the cooperation. A few days later, Zhou Daobai returned to Tianqi Mountain, intending to transport the remaining Zhou family mortals to Shenlin Mountain. However, as soon as he returned to the foot of the mountain, he was stunned in place, and the scene in front of him came into his eyes and hit his heart hard. The ground was full of corpses lying everywhere, and the dried thick blood seeped into the soil, dyeing the surrounding soil blood red, and the strong smell of blood rushed into the nose. Tiny mosquitoes flew in the air, gathering around the gradually smelling corpses, including young and strong, old and weak, women and children, His eyes trembled, and he looked at this former homeland again. Tianqi Mountain, which was like a fairyland, was now full of smoke and miasma. Resentment and anger squeezed in his heart, and Zhou Daobai could no longer bear it. His heart-wrenching roar echoed in Tianqi Mountain. Ma Hongtu, Chen Jiaonian, the hatred of slaughtering my Zhou family will not end until death. Zhou Daobai looked at the tragic scene in front of him, his eyes full of bloodshot, and he was stunned for dozens of minutes. Finally, a big fire ignited the entire Tianqi Mountain, including nearly 10 villages at the foot of the mountain, along with the cold corpses and all the hatred, all burned in the flames. The fire burned for 3 days and 3 nights, with no sign of stopping, and it intensified until everything was burned to ashes. Deep Forest Mountain. As the new residents of the Zhou family, a large number of Zhou family members have gathered. A total of 70,000 Zhou family mortals have been transferred here, and some flat valleys have been found nearby to rebuild villages for resettlement. The Zhou family cultivators all gathered in Deep Forest Mountain, and the atmosphere was extremely depressing. After this defeat, the family lost nearly 50 members in total. These included 3 9th-level elders of Qi refining, the entire hunting team, and all the members stationed in Tiamu Mountain. In addition, when Zhou Daoqi and Zhou Shouyun and others were transporting magic tools, they were also attacked, and 8 members were killed or injured. Nowadays, there are only less than 100 members who have really returned to Deep Forest Mountain. The prosperous Zhou family has instantly regressed more than 50 years. The reduction of the number of members is still secondary. The most fatal thing is the death of the top masters, which has greatly reduced the foundation of the Zhou family. At present, there are only 4 elders left in the family: the eldest elder Zhou Chengyi, the 4th elder Zhou Chengyan, the 6th elder Zhou Chengguang, and the 7th elder Zhou Shorong. Zhou Daobai, whose strength has reached the 9th level of Qi refining, has naturally become the 8th elder of the family, which is a shot of confidence for the clan members. But even so, the atmosphere of grief has not dissipated, and anger and resentment have long been buried deep in the heart, especially after learning about the massacre in Tianqi Mountain. The atmosphere is even more depressing. Everyone has put all their efforts into cultivation, just waiting for one day to completely end the hatred of tens of thousands of Zhou family members. However, in the short term, the focus of the family will still be on development. The damage this time is too great, and the family has long been overwhelmed and urgently needs to recuperate. The location of the deep mountains and forests is extremely hidden, and the geographical environment is excellent. Although it is not as good as Tianqi Mountain, it can barely maintain the next development. This time, in order to better conceal and remember the pain of losing his home, the head of the family did not choose to build a house. Instead, a large number of cultivation caves were directly dug out in the mountain where the spiritual vein is located for family members to live in. Now, the spiritual liquid from the spiritual spring of Tianqi Mountain has been integrated into the spiritual veins, directly raising the quality of the spiritual veins to the lower 2nd grade, and the spiritual energy around has become much richer. The empty hillsides and valleys around have all been reclaimed as spiritual fields to plant various spiritual plants needed for life, striving to be self-sufficient here. The cultivation resources moved from Tianqi Mountain were not all stored, but most of them were distributed to the clan members to improve their strength. The family needs fresh blood and strong strength to regain the lost confidence. The clan members spent almost all their thoughts on cultivation, and more people began to retreat. But the path of cultivation is a long thing after all, which requires day after day of persistence. How can you break through smoothly with just passion? But such a strong momentum also gave the elders a glimmer of hope. In Shenline Mountain, a simple stone cave was dug out. The luminous stone illuminated the not-so-wide space. A total of 7 people gathered here. They were 5 elders, plus Zhou Daocheng and Zhou Daoqi, representing the pillars of the Zhou family today and the hope for the future. The head of the family, Zhou Chengyi, still sat in the first seat. His expression was as calm as ever, but his old face was added with a hint of oldness and haggardness. "Brother, how is the clan leader?" 6th elder Zhou Chengguang asked cautiously. Zhou Chengyi was silent for a moment, and then said, "The clan leader can still hold on for a while, but his lifespan has come to an end. Everyone should be prepared." Everyone fell silent, and heavy pressure was on everyone's shoulders. Among the crowd, Zhou Chengyi was the only one who had the most stable mood. He said calmly, "There is no need to think too much about these things. The most important thing now is the development of the family. Now there are only 2 bases left, and the family power has shrunk completely. What do you think?" The 4th elder Zhou Chengyan pondered for a moment and spoke first. "Our Zhou family started by refining instruments. This is the field we are best at. I think we should still focus on refining instruments in the future." But after saying this, everyone's faces did not show a relieved expression, but were still full of solemnity. It is precisely because the Zhou family is a family of refining instruments and has a lot of experience in the magic instrument industry that they understand more clearly how difficult this road is for the current Zhou family. The 6th elder Zhou Chengguang spoke calmly. "Everyone should understand that if you want to earn spirit stones by selling magic instruments, there are 3 indispensable conditions, namely, refiners, refining materials, and sales channels, but we cannot meet the other 2 points except the first point." Hearing this, everyone's face was gloomy and a little frustrated. The Zhou family now only has the inheritance of formations and a small number of formation masters. As for the formation materials, most of them were obtained from Tiamu Mountain, and a small part was obtained from the market. Now that Tiamu Mountain has been lost, it is equivalent to losing the biggest capital for refining magic tools. It is really difficult for a good cook to cook without rice. The biggest sales channels in the past were Sifang Market and Luwan Market. Now the shops in the 2 markets have been sold, so naturally there is nowhere to sell. In other words, even if the shops do not sell, the Zhou family dare not show up in the market easily. Once they are discovered by the Ma family and the Chen family, the consequences will be disastrous. However, Zhou Daocheng fell into deep thought this time. Perhaps he has a very suitable channel in his hands. But he has to consider whether this channel is suitable for today's writers. Before Zhou Daocheng could finish thinking, Zhou Chengyi hastily ended the discussion about weapon refining. For the Zhou family, weapon refining must be a method that cannot be given up, but in today's situation, there are many unavoidable constraints. The most important factor was the threat from the Ma family and Chen family, which forced them to live in the deep forest mountains, which greatly reduced their development potential. Zhou Chengyi sighed softly and said, "Everyone, please consider the development of Shenline Mountain. The Zhou family will live here for a long time." Everyone fell into deep thought and all lowered their heads and began to think. Not long after, 6th elder Zhou Chengguang was the first to speak. "Master, the vegetation around Deep Forest Mountain is dense and the soil is fertile. It can cultivate a large number of spiritual fields. It should be very good to plant spiritual valley spiritual plants. Especially in the nearby dense forest, there are a large number of first-order spiritual fruit trees growing. As long as they are planted in a standardized way, they can be used as daily food and can also assist in training to improve strength. It is a very good choice." Zhou Chengyi nodded and said, "Yes, I have indeed made a good profit. I will arrange for Shozan to be responsible for it, but Chongguang, you have to pay more attention to the work of expelling the surrounding monsters." "No problem, I can't go out now anyway, so I just walk around a lot." Zhou Chengguang agreed with a wry smile. "Brother, I also have an idea. I found a first-class low-grade red-feathered spirit chicken in the mountains and forests to the south. Although the quality is not high, it can be cultivated. I can try to domesticate and breed it." Red-feathered chicken. There is a large slope in the valley behind, which is very suitable for breeding. Let Shoji and the others be responsible for this matter. Quote. After coming to Deep Forest Mountain for a few days, everyone had already roughly explored the surrounding environment. They had a pretty good idea of what resources were nearby. Zhou Daoqi thought for a moment and said something that no one had noticed. "Grandpa, I recently went to the mountain forest to the east and saw a spiritual tree. The quality should reach the 2nd level, but it is guarded by a 1st-level high-grade monster." "Oh, 2nd-order spiritual wood." Zhou Chengyi raised his brows with a little surprise in his eyes, but he quickly calmed down and said with a little hesitation, "You can go and take a look when you have time, but the guardian monster next to the 2nd-order spirit tree is definitely not weak, so you have to take good care of it. Consider it." Zhou Daoqi did not give up, but spoke again, "Grandpa, that spiritual tree is different. According to my many years of experience in refining weapons, the wood should be extremely hard and tough, with a diameter of 1 foot, which is very suitable for use. Let's make bow weapons. After Zhou Daoqi finished speaking, everyone present showed surprised expressions, and Zhou Chengyi also became a little more energetic. Even Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but think about it when he heard this. The bow weapon Zhou Daoqi mentioned may not be the ordinary bows and arrows commonly used by monks, but a large bow and arrow. Zhou Daocheng remembered that his grandfather Zhou Chengyuan accidentally entered an ancestor's cave 2 years ago and obtained the refining method of a special magical weapon called Juling bow. This is a large crossbow with a second-level quality. It is huge and requires multiple monks to control it at the same time. However, its power cannot be underestimated. It is said that its attack power is comparable to that of a foundation-building monk. However, the Juling bow has great demand for materials. It requires wood with a quality of up to second level, and the hardness and toughness must be very strong. Over the years, the family has also tried to find wood that meets the requirements, but unfortunately has not been successful. Although the ironwood in Ironwood Mountain barely meets the standard in hardness, its toughness is severely lacking and it can easily collapse. And even the second-order ironwood is very slender overall and cannot meet the requirements of the Juling bow. As for the spiritual wood that appears on the market, none of them can meet the 4 conditions of quality, hardness, toughness, and thickness at the same time. Therefore, the refining of the Juling bow has been delayed, and it has not been refined until now. But now, what Zhou Daoqi said brings hope to everyone. As a first-level high-grade weapon refiner, Zhou Daoqi is extremely familiar with various weapon refinement materials. Naturally, no one will think that he is talking nonsense, let alone that he is mistaken. At this time, the eyes of everyone present were a little solemn. Fourth Elder Zhou Chengyan said seriously, "If what Daoqi said is true, then it is indeed necessary to go there. Maybe it can add a big killer weapon to the Zhou family." What a gigantic bow. Brother Chengyuan has brought it to the family for many years. I never thought that it would be possible to successfully refine it now. God has truly blessed the Zhou family. Sixth Elder Zhou Chengguang also looked excited. Only the head of the family, Zhou Chengyi, was relatively calm. He tapped the table with his knuckles to signal everyone to quiet down. Don't be happy too early, otherwise you will end up being extremely happy and sad. Dodge, have you seen the breed of that guardian monster? Zhou Daoqi puffed up his fat belly and said, "It should be an iron-backed savage bear. His strength is very good, and he is likely to reach the peak of the first level." Everyone couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. The first-level high-grade peak was almost equivalent to the 9th-level peak weapon refining monk. Moreover, the monster's body is extremely strong, and it can split mountains and rocks with one palm. Its sharp claws and iron back are comparable to first-level high-grade magic weapons, and its strength is much stronger than that of monks of the same level. There is some trouble. The iron-backed bear is extremely powerful. Even if we fight against it, we are likely to be seriously injured. Sixth Elder Zhou Chengguang said slightly worriedly. Zhou Chengyi waved his hand. "No need to worry too much. Let's go check the situation tomorrow. If the spirit tree does meet the requirements, then we will kill the iron-backed bear even if we pay a certain price. This is a second-level giant ridge bow. It only requires a few strong men at the 9th level of qi refining to control it, and it can explode with power comparable to the foundation building stage. Once the refining is successful, even if the clan leader has an accident, the Zhou family will have the confidence to gain a foothold in this mountain forest. This will be a strategic-level magic weapon that will affect the family's future." Next, the meeting lasted for several hours. As the core of the family, they talked about a lot of matters about the family's future, including the allocation of resources, the direction of development, the cultivation of family descendants, etc. It was not until late at night that the meeting was barely over and everyone returned to the cave to rest. However, without everyone noticing, Zhou Daocheng secretly stayed until the end, and waited until everyone left, and still lingered in his seat. Zhou Chengyi raised his eyebrows, glanced at him lightly, and said, "Daocheng, everyone has left, do you have anything to talk to Grandpa in private?" Zhou Daocheng did not speak directly, but vigilantly closed the stone door of the cave, and sat back in his chair after making sure that there was no one around. Seeing Zhou Daocheng's cautious attitude, Zhou Chengyi also became a little interested. He raised his head with interest and stared at this grandson, as if he wanted to see through him. He knew that this grandson might have some secrets, but since the child was unwilling to talk, he didn't want to ask. Zhou Daocheng looked thoughtful and slowly said, "Grandpa, Daocheng has been hiding something from you." Zhou Chengyi's face changed slightly, and he asked with a smile, "Why are you willing to talk about it now?" "The family is at the critical moment of life and death, and I, Zhou Daocheng, need to contribute." "Then tell me, Grandpa is also very curious, what opportunities have you obtained in these years?" Zhou Daocheng just smiled and said, "Grandpa, I accidentally found a relic near Balin Lake, from which I obtained the inheritance of the formation. Now I should be considered a formation master." Formation master. Zhou Chengyi's pupils shrank suddenly, his breathing became heavier, and a look of, "Is it true?" appeared in his eyes. He had heard from the clan leader that his grandson had only used extremely powerful formations, so he had some guesses in his heart. But even though he was mentally prepared, when he really heard the news, he still couldn't help but get excited. After thinking silently for a while, Zhou Chengyi frowned and asked, "What quality can the formation inheritance you obtained reach?" "Second grade upper grade. Not bad, not bad, not bad," Zhou Chengyi said 3 times in a row, and his face was even more joyful. Such a level of formation inheritance is no weaker than the Zhou family's qi refining inheritance. Zhou Daocheng said, "Grandpa, I plan to pass on the formation inheritance to the family and record it. If there are family members who are interested in the formation, they can also be sent to me for training." Zhou Daocheng had planned to tell the family about this information a long time ago, but he only told a part of it and did not tell the whole story. For example, the true quality of the formation inheritance is actually the 3rd grade upper grade, not the 2nd grade upper grade. This is also for safety reasons to prevent information leakage and cause family disasters. Zhou Daocheng did not say anything about the situation of the fusion formation. That was his own unique method, so how could he hand it over casually? After explaining, Zhou Daocheng took out the formation inheritance book he had prepared in advance and handed it to the head of the family. Gently stroking the cover of the book, Zhou Chengyi's expression was moved, and his lips trembled slightly as he said, "Daocheng, on behalf of all the family members, I thank you for your contribution to the family. Grandpa will remember this contribution for you. We are of the same clan and blood, you are too polite, Grandpa." Zhou Daocheng smiled and waved his hand, and continued casually, "Grandpa, there is actually one more thing. I may be able to find a channel for the family to sell magic tools." However, this time, Zhou Chengyi did not show a surprised expression, but hesitated and sighed, "The sales channel is not the biggest problem. The key is the Ma family and the Chen family. Once we take the initiative to expose our identities, they will never let it go." Zhou Daocheng was silent for a moment, and said lightly, "My channel does not require the family to expose their identities, but only needs to provide magic tools." Zhou Chengyi's eyes trembled, and he looked deeply at this grandson, and he actually felt the indifference and confidence in his tone. Although he didn't know where the confidence came from, with the foundation of the formation inheritance, Zhou Chengyi finally chose to believe it. "Grandpa won't explore your secrets too much. If it is really beneficial to the family, you can make your own decision. I believe you have a sense of propriety." "Okay, I will consider it carefully." The next morning, after leaving the cultivation cave, Zhou Daocheng saw the busy scene of the tribesmen outside. The elderly tribesmen waved hoes and divided the spiritual fields in the flat area. The faint spiritual energy around them made this deep forest more lively. Due to the geographical location, although the deep forest has fertile soil and sufficient water, there is a disadvantage that must be faced, that is, insufficient sunshine. The surrounding high mountains will block most of the sunlight, resulting in late sunrise, early sunset, short direct sunlight time, and generally low temperature around. So in the selection of spiritual valleys and spiritual plants, priority will be given to cold-resistant and less sunlight-demanding ones, such as Cold-Beard Valley and Autumn Velvet Flower. In the past, such spiritual plants were planted less in Tianqi Mountain, so the tribesmen did not have enough experience. Now starting from scratch, they are also on the road of trying. Oh, cluck. From a distance, Zhou Daocheng heard the sharp cries of chickens coming from the other side of the mountain. The sounds came one after another, extremely excited. Is this the red-feathered spiritual chicken mentioned yesterday? It seems that a lot of them have been caught. Zhou Daocheng silently looked at this lively scene. Planting spiritual fields and raising spiritual birds are the foundation for the development of a family of immortal cultivation and the foundation of all strength. A family that is good at planting and breeding may not necessarily be very powerful, but any powerful force will not be bad in both planting and breeding. Zhou Daocheng looked for a while and was called away by his eldest brother Zhou Daobai. For ordinary clan members, the main task is planting and breeding to maintain the bottom development of the family. But for Zhou Daocheng, there is a more important task today to explore the second-level spiritual wood discovered by Zhou Daoqi. The spiritual wood that may become the material of the giant ridge bow has to be taken seriously by the family. This is likely to become the foundation of the future and has extraordinary significance. The only people who participated in this operation were the head of the family Zhou Chengyi, the seventh elder Zhou Shorong, and Zhou Daobai, Zhou Daocheng and Zhou Daoqi. As for the remaining two elders, they were stationed in Shenline Mountain to consolidate the rear. Tens of minutes later, the five people crossed the wild forest and saw a spiritual tree with extraordinary aura dozens of kilometers away from Shenline Mountain. The spiritual energy was rich, the branches were thick and strong, and they swayed slightly in the breeze, and their excellent toughness could be vaguely seen. Daoqi, is this the one? Yes, I checked the classics yesterday. It should be called Silver Silk Spirit Wood. It is named because the internal lines are like silver silk flowing. It is hard and tough, and it fully meets the requirements of the giant ridge bow. Zhou Daoqi said seriously, with a hint of desire in his eyes. In this case, we must take it back. Zhou Chengyi took a few steps forward and carefully looked at the situation around the silver silk spirit wood, but did not see the existence of the monster. On the side, Zhou Shorong took the initiative to say, "Master, the ironback wild bear seems to be out hunting. It just so happens that we can cut the spirit wood and take it back." Then before Zhou Shorong could take action, he was stopped by Zhou Chengyi and Zhou Daoqi at the same time. Zhou Chengyi said coldly, "Don't be impulsive. The monster will leave its scent on the natural treasures. If you rashly bring them back to Deep Forest Mountain, it is likely to lure the ironback barbarian bear back to Deep Forest Mountain." Zhou Shorong's face tightened, knowing that he thought too simply, and asked, "Do we have to kill the ironback barbarian bear? But with our strength, it is still quite difficult to besiege it." Zhou Daocheng smiled and took the initiative to say, "Leave it to me. Make some preparations in advance, and it may be easier than you think." As he spoke, Zhou Daocheng took out two arrays, namely the Golden Vine Array and the Splitting Gold Array. Previously, when he was being chased by Chen Jiaonian, Zhou Daocheng used a set of Golden Vine Array to escape, so it was lost. However, after arriving at Shenline Mountain, he used the materials in his family to refine another set of Golden Vine Array, which is the one in his hand now. Taking advantage of the fact that the iron-backed barbarian bear was not in the nest, Zhou Daocheng quickly stepped forward and arranged two sets of arrays as quickly as possible on the road it must pass. Then it was time to wait. Almost an hour later, Zhou Daocheng felt a wild breath coming from the distant jungle. He couldn't help but tense up and hurriedly hid his whereabouts. At the same time, the spiritual energy in his hands emerged, ready to control the array at any time. Not long after, a huge bear monster with brown-black hair all over its body and hard iron armor on its back slowly came over, holding a blue wolf corpse in its mouth. Then when it approached the nest, it suddenly stopped and looked around with extremely sharp eyes. Zhou Daocheng couldn't help holding his breath. Although the process of setting up the formation was short, it left some human smell after all, which was extremely sensitive to monsters. Fortunately, although the ironback bear discovered something, it didn't care too much and continued to move forward. The next moment, the formation pattern was looming, followed by a violent sound of breaking the ground, and three huge thorn vines appeared instantly, surrounding the ironback bear. When it found something wrong, it was too late and there was no time to exit the formation range. Bang, bang, bang. Three thorn vines broke through the ground, tied up the legs and neck respectively, and forcibly controlled the ironback bear. Before it could break free, the golden splitting formation followed closely, and the golden red sharp blade emerged, and the unstable gold attribute aura and fire attribute aura slowly fluctuated. Boom. Rumble. The blinding light made it hard to open your eyes. The first sharp blade exploded, followed by a series of explosions. Deep pits were blown out of the surrounding ground, and the nearby mountains were shaking. The terrifying aura instantly scared away all the monsters around. Gulp. When the explosion stopped, there was only the sound of swallowing saliva around. The news that Zhou Daocheng was a formation master was known to the core members of the Zhou family, but they never expected that the formation would burst out with such a powerful power. The cooperation of only 2 sets of formations was not weaker than the attack of the 9th level of Qi refining. Especially the second set of formations, which exploded instantly without any signs. Even a 9th level Qi refining strongman would find it difficult to come out intact. When everyone was shocked, the head of the family, Zhou Chengyi, reminded coldly, "Don't be distracted. This level of attack can't kill the ironback barbarian bear. Prepare to surround and kill it." It seemed to confirm the head of the family's statement. The next moment, a terrifying roar sounded, with resentment and anger. The scarred ironback bear stood up from the ground with great effort, looking around fiercely. The 2 arrays attacked it without any defense, and even if its skin was very hard, it suffered a lot of injuries. Especially Zhou Daocheng personally controlled it, so that the golden and red blades of the gold-splitting array floated at the bottom, specifically to blow up the chassis of the ironback bear, which was now bloody and flying. Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but feel regretful. If he had an array that attacked from bottom to top, it would instantly attack the weak point and cause greater injuries. Before he could think about it, the battle situation changed rapidly. Get ready to attack. Zhou Chengyi looked cautious and took out an exquisite bell magic weapon, the soul-shaking bell. This is one of the most famous magic weapons of the Zhou family. The quality reaches the 2nd level lower grade. It was refined by a Zhou family ancestor in the late stage of Qi refining. It has the effect of shocking the soul and has always been the magic weapon of the patriarchs of all generations. But now the clan leader was seriously injured, so the head of the family, Zhou Chengyi, borrowed it for use. Just activating the soul-calming bell made Zhou Chengyi's mana depleted and his breath weak. He quickly stuffed several pills into his mouth to recover from his fatigue. The situation of the iron-backed barbarian bear on the opposite side was not much better. Under the spiritual attack of the 2nd level magic weapon, he knelt on one knee with a bang, covered his head with his 2 bare paws, and let out a heart-wrenching roar. Good opportunity. The 7th elder Zhou Shorong and Zhou Daobai took action at the first time, with swords unsheathed and guns shot out like dragons. Both of them focused on attacking and broke through the defense of the iron-backed barbarian bear in an instant, and jumped into a huge hole in the thick muscles. At such a critical moment of life and death, the iron-backed barbarian bear struggled to dodge and barely protected his neck, heart, head and other important parts. The attack of the 9th level Qi refining expert may not be particularly serious for the thick-skinned ironback bear, but the severe pain in his mind is extremely fatal, making it unable to make an effective resistance and can only wave its paws at will. Zhou Daocheng saw the right opportunity and the golden spear vine formation swept over again. The thick vines were not used for attack, but to tie up the legs again, effectively restricting the movement of the ironback bear. And under Zhou Daocheng's precise control, it can also help Zhou Daobai and Zhou Shorong block the attack. The 2 9th level Qi refining experts were responsible for attacking, while Zhou Daocheng and the head of the family Zhou Chengyi were responsible for control and defense, each doing their own job and cooperating tacitly. Only Zhou Daoqi, with his round belly, cheered on the side. The following battle process was completely expected by everyone. With its body under control, the ironback bear could not escape and could only be forced to face the enemy, but most of the attacks could not be avoided or blocked, and its injuries became more and more serious. Whenever the ironback bear fought back in anger, Zhou Shorong and Zhou Daobai would reduce the frequency of their attacks and stay away from the center of the battle to avoid getting hurt. When the ironback bear was exhausted, the two would continue to launch fierce attacks. After repeating this many times, the ironback bear could no longer hold on and fell to the ground with a bang. The blood on the ground was flowing like a stream, and the strong smell of blood filled the air. The ironback bear's chest rose and fell slightly. Although it was not completely dead, it was already at the end of its strength. In order to prevent the ironback bear from counter-attacking before its death, Zhou Daocheng stopped the inhumane attacks of Zhou Daobai and the others and decided to use a more gentle way to get rid of the ironback bear. Then, in the horrified eyes of the other 4 people, Zhou Daocheng controlled the 3 huge thorny vines and whipped the ironback bear's body continuously. Pa-pa-pa, ah-woo, pa-pa-pa, ah-woo, pa-pa-pa, ah-woo-woo. The rhythmic slapping sound echoed in the forest, and the iron-backed savage bear was covered in blood. If it was in its prime, with the strength of the peak of the first grade upper grade, it would naturally not be afraid of the attack of thorny vines. But at this moment, it was seriously injured and had already been torn apart. Even the whipping that didn't hurt it made it feel miserable. The papa-papa sound accompanied by the wailing sound of ah-woo echoed for a quarter of an hour without ending. Until the end, Zhou Chengyi grabbed Zhou Daocheng's hand with an embarrassed look and shook his head slightly. Daocheng, killing is not abusing life, or let's give it a quick death. Zhou Daocheng was stunned for a moment, turned his head and looked at the iron-backed savage bear lying on the ground, only to see tears in its eyes and snot hanging from the tip of its nose. The continuous pain made the corners of its mouth twitch, and its perky bare buttocks were covered with whip wounds. At Zhou Daocheng's gaze, the ironback bear whined faintly. The originally sharp eyes were no longer arrogant, only humiliation and fear, and even vaguely, a hint of obedience and begging for mercy. Hiss, this. Seeing this scene, Zhou Daobai also looked at his 6th brother with a complicated expression, and couldn't help but sighed. I stabbed it so many times, causing it to be seriously injured, but it only provoked its fighting spirit and anger. I didn't expect that the 6th brother was so amazing that he was beaten to submission. Zhou Daocheng was also stunned in place, with the corners of his mouth twitching uncontrollably. The result in front of him was not what he wanted. Among the crowd, the most melancholy person was the head of the family Zhou Chengyi, his eyes full of self-blame. It's all my fault. I was too hasty to marry Daocheng a concubine so early. Ahem. Zhou Shorong coughed lightly, interrupting the calmness of the scene, and asked, Head, what should we do next? The savagery and wildness of this iron-backed bear seemed to have been beaten away by Daocheng. Zhou Chengyi narrowed his eyes slightly, and finally said with some worry, we in the Zhou family don't have the means to control beasts. I'm afraid this kind of submission won't last long. Zhou Daobai also nodded. The head of the family's worries were not unreasonable. Without strong control methods, how can we ensure that the iron-backed bear can always remain submissive? Is it possible to whip it every day? Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but shudder and directly gave up this idea. But after thinking about it, an idea suddenly appeared in his mind. Although he didn't have the means to control beasts, he did have a spiritual secret method. I just don't know if the spiritual secret method can be used on monsters. However, it is still worth a try to subdue a first-class monster with extremely strong strength. Zhou Daocheng walked to the side of the iron-backed barbarian bear, stared at it with cold eyes, and said in a cold voice, You are not allowed to resist what I am going to do to you next. Although the iron-backed barbarian bear could not understand human language, it could sense the threat and immediately shrank back in fear. Then, Zhou Daocheng turned his head to look at the head of the family, indicating that he would be his guardian. The head of the family was a little confused, but he did not ask more questions. Instead, he held the soul calming bell and calmly appeared next to Zhou Daocheng. Zhou Daocheng sat cross-legged on the ground and began to operate the spiritual secret method, separating a subtle spiritual energy again. His strength broke through the 8th level of Qi refining, his mental power was slightly improved, and the number that could be controlled was also increased. However, according to his estimation, after controlling this iron-backed barbarian bear, it is likely to reach saturation again. The spiritual secret method is too advanced for Qi refining cultivators after all, and it is difficult to control it perfectly. As the secret method ended, Zhou Daocheng controlled his weak spirit and slowly entered the mind of the iron-backed barbarian bear. Under the threat of Zhou Daocheng's gaze, the iron-backed barbarian bear did not dare to resist and accepted the control of the secret method of spirit. As the ceremony ended, Zhou Daocheng also let out a long breath, and a smile appeared on his face. A monster whose strength has reached the peak of the 9th level of Qi refining, and whose actual combat power is even stronger than that of the same cultivator, can be imagined to have improved its strength. On the side, Zhou Daobai and others also showed surprised expressions. Zhou Daocheng's methods are richer than they imagined. 6th brother, do you know the method of controlling beasts? I think so, but I am not proficient in it, and I don't understand it deeply. Zhou Daocheng just explained it casually, without explaining this method too much. They did not ask questions, but looked at this iron-backed barbarian with surprise, and the head of the family, Zhou Chengyi, was even more happy. They knew in their hearts that with this iron-backed barbarian bear, the strength of our Zhou family has been greatly improved, and the losses during this period have been compensated. The most urgent task was to cure the ironback bear first to prevent him from dying directly due to his severe injuries. The head of the family, Zhou Chengyi, was not stingy. He took out a large amount of healing pills and stuffed them into the mouth of the ironback bear, and used spiritual energy to help it digest. Visible to the naked eye, the dense bullet holes, sword wounds, burns, explosion wounds, on his body were gradually recovering. The rich spiritual energy wrapped around his internal organs and stopped the continuous flow of blood. The ironback bear's spirit was also much better, and his breathing finally calmed down, but he was still lying on the ground unable to move. At this time, Zhou Daoqi was just responsible for collecting silver silk spiritual wood. This time, the harvest was far beyond everyone's imagination. A guardian spirit beast at the peak of the 9th level of qi refining, plus a 2nd level spiritual wood, allowed the Zhou family, which had suffered heavy losses, to recover again. After the ironback bear recovered some of his injuries, the group returned to Shenline Mountain. Not long after, a piece of information spread throughout the family. The head of the family led people out to look for natural treasures. They unexpectedly encountered an iron-backed wild bear. After defeating it, Zhou Daocheng used the beast taming method to control it and successfully subdued it as the family's spiritual beast. The strength of the iron-backed wild bear was not clearly revealed, but even so, it also caused a lot of discussion in the whole family. That's an iron-backed wild bear. At least it has the strength of the late stage of qi refining. Monsters are different from cultivators. The actual combat power should be stronger. The head of the family is unwilling to reveal the strength of the wild bear. It should be that the strength is not too strong, otherwise it would not be tamed so smoothly. Hehe, fourth brother, you guessed wrong. It is said that the head of the family personally led the team out this time to find a 2nd-level natural treasure. He even brought the soul-suppressing bell. Do you think the monster he encountered will be weak? Hiss. 2nd-level natural treasure, soul-suppressing bell. But I think the most amazing thing is that kid Daocheng, who actually knows how to control beasts. He really didn't lose face for Elder Chengyuan. Elder Chengyuan. Alas, thinking back to the family back then. The atmosphere always becomes dull inadvertently, and the clan members still can't get out of the pain in a short time. But the development of the family must continue, and a strong family always rises from weakness. Zhou Daocheng came to the temporary meeting room and said, "Master, you are looking for me." Zhou Chengyi put down the book in his hand and smiled. "Yes, how is the ironback barbarian bear? Is it still safe?" "It is still recuperating. The injury is too serious. It will take a few months to recover. However, its character is still gentle and it is not a particularly irritable monster." Zhou Chengyi also nodded. If it really has no wisdom and a monster with an extremely violent character, it is impossible to surrender voluntarily. Relatively speaking, wild beasts do not have the intrigues of humans, and they will not beat around the bush. Since they choose to surrender, they are really willing to surrender. That's good. When the ironback barbarian bear recovers, take him to Balin Lake. We need to leave there unattended. Your elder brother won't go there. You and Zhao Yunji will be in charge of the Balin Lake station from now on. Zhou Daocheng was stunned, raised his head in surprise, and met the meaningful gaze of the patriarch. After a little thought, Zhou Daocheng understood, smiled and said, "Thank you, Grandpa, for your help. When I returned to the family this time, too many things happened, and I had no choice but to reveal too many of my own secrets, including formations, spiritual secrets, and even exercises. It's just that Zhou Chengyi knows better and doesn't get to the bottom of things easily. However, he also knows very well that there may be some deeper secrets hidden in his grandson. Instead of guessing and investigating, it is better to let the children go out and have some adventures, which may bring some different surprises." This is also in line with Zhou Daocheng's wish. He naturally hopes to have full control over Balin Lake. Now with this arrangement, he can also develop the valley and completely develop it into the hidden force behind the Zhou family. In a few days, I will return to Balin Lake with the iron-backed barbarian bear. If the family needs it, they can contact me at Balin Lake. Zhou Daocheng said honestly. Zhou Chengyi's face changed when he heard this, and he snorted coldly and said, "What, you want to cause a split? Should I contact you if I have anything? Come back to me every year, otherwise don't blame me for being ruthless." Zhou Daocheng's eyes twitched and he said helplessly, Okay, I come back every year. By the way, you can take a few more children with you. If you are willing, you can teach them a thing or two about the formation. This can be regarded as for the inheritance of the family. Zhou Daocheng nodded silently, and a different emotion arose in his heart. Once upon a time, the head of the family always acted like an elder and spoke in a commanding tone. But now, he treats himself as an adult and talks in a consultative tone. Zhou Daocheng knew that this was the respect the family head had for the talents of the descendants of the family, and it was also a legacy passed down from generation to generation. From a blood perspective, they are grandfathers and grandsons. From a family perspective, it is a trust between two generations of family heirs. Okay, if they have the talent for formations, I will teach them carefully. I hope Grandpa can rest assured. I don't have to worry about you doing anything. Then grandson, please take your leave first. After the conversation ended, Zhou Daocheng was about to leave the conference room when he suddenly heard a call from behind him. Daocheng, Grandpa, what else do you have to say? Zhou Daocheng asked with some confusion. Zhou Chengyi looked complicated and asked with a little hesitation, if the family gives the foundation establishment pill to your eldest brother, will you blame the family? Zhou Daocheng paused, then a smile appeared on his face, and he said in a clear voice, Grandpa, you are worrying too much. Whether it is me or my brother, the foundation establishment pill has never been an obstacle on our path to immortality. After saying that, he turned around and left calmly. The sunlight outside the cave spilled in, lengthening his figure. Zhou Chengyi was stunned for several minutes. After a long time, an inexplicable look flashed in his eyes, and he murmured, perhaps there will be some great people in Daozi's generation. Once again, he stayed in the deep forest mountain for a few days. On the one hand, he was waiting for the iron-backed bear to recover, and on the other hand, he was selecting children who were good at formations. Most of the Dao generation were young. After screening, Zhou Daocheng selected 4 children. They are the 16th brother Daoyuan and the 18th brother Daoshou. They have one thing in common, that is, they did not live in the Zhou family since childhood, but were born from mortals of the Zhou family. Because of his childhood experiences, he has a strong and hard-working character. Although he is young, he has a mature mind and is extremely serious in his cultivation. Their talents are not very good, they all have 4 spiritual roots. Since they have no direct bloodline elders, their cultivation resources are relatively scarce. Zhou Daocheng plans to take them with him to teach them. The other 2 children were the remaining siblings from the small qi refining family that once occupied Deep Forest Mountain, Lin Chengxi and Lin Chongshu. The 2 of them were not of the Zhou family, and the other children were not close to them. Moreover, the family had been destroyed, and the 2 siblings were also very withdrawn. Zhou Daocheng observed for a period of time that the sister and brother only stayed in their own houses and never came into contact with other people. Except for the 4th aunt Zhou Shushuan, the 2nd sister Zhou Daoyu, and a few other people such as himself, anyone approaching them would be intimidated, sensitive. Considering that this situation would not be conducive to the growth of the 2 of them, Zhou Daocheng decided to take them to Balin Lake. And it just so happened that the little boy Lin Chongshu had an introverted personality and was very interested in battle tactics. He was a good boy. In addition to these 4 children, the eldest brother Zhou Daobai will also go together this time. It is said that there are some important things left in Balin Lake that need to be retrieved. 6 people and 1 bear set out on the road, escorted by the iron-backed bear. They were very safe along the way, and they didn't even see the shadow of the monster. In the nearby forest, the iron-backed bear with the 9th level of qi refining strength is already the top existence, and it is rare to encounter monsters stronger than it. Return safely to White Scale Lake. Zhou Daocheng did not return directly to his island, but at the request of his eldest brother Zhou Daobai, he first went to his island. Zhou Daocheng has been here several times, but only on the periphery of the island and does not know what is going on in the depths of the island. But this time, when he went deep into the island, he was immediately stunned by the scene in front of him. An entire 12 acres of first-grade spiritual energy were neatly planted with spiritual plants, and dense spiritual energy condensed in the air. What is even more shocking is that 6 spirit-gathering arrays cover the spiritual field, continuously absorbing spiritual energy and maintaining the concentration of spiritual energy in Lintian. For a moment, Zhou Daocheng couldn't tell who the formation master was. Is his eldest brother too rich? Noticing Zhou Daocheng's gaze, Zhou Daobai smiled lightly and said with a hint of regret, "If I had known that you, 6th brother, were an array master, why would I have bothered to acquire the spirit-gathering array? I wasted a lot of spirit stones." Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but sigh. "Brother, what on earth did you plant? They are all first-grade high-quality spiritual fields, and they also need a spirit-gathering array. The things should not be simple, right?" Zhou Daobai nodded, bent down to check, and said, "It is indeed not simple. This is the most important material of the Ningling pill, Ningyu root." Ningling pill. Zhou Daocheng pondered carefully, and finally widened his eyes. Is it the Ningling pill known as the small foundation building pill? Not bad. Brother, you also know how to make pills. You hide it very well. Zhou Daobai couldn't help but roll his eyes, and said unhappily, "I just made a crude pill. I just planted Ningyu root and then sold it to the Zhu family of Danyu Mountain." Zhou Daocheng couldn't help smacking his lips and asked, "Then you should earn a lot, right? It is said that one of this thing can buy thousands of spirit stones." "I didn't ask for spirit stones. I asked the Zhu family to give me 2 of the finished pills they had refined." Zhou Daocheng glanced at his elder brother. He didn't expect that he had such a brain. It was really impressive. "So, big brother, are you here to bring the Ningyu root back to Shenline Mountain?" "No, let's plant it here. I have given the formula of the growth liquid to your second sister. She will come to take care of it in a while. You only need to be responsible for your second sister's safety at that time." Zhou Daocheng nodded in agreement. Since his big brother had already arranged it, he didn't need to worry too much. The value of strategic resources such as Ningling pills is also worth Zhou Daocheng's careful attention. If he is lucky, he may be able to add a foundation-building strongman to the family. However, in most cases, Ningling pills will be saved and will not be used directly by family members, because the failure rate of breakthrough is still too high. 1/10 probability. This means that 10 family elders at the peak of the 9th level of qi refining will consume 10 Ningling pills before a foundation-building strongman may appear. If it were not a critical moment for the survival of the family, it would be impossible to waste the family's strongman in this way. The only possibility is that when a family member is 69 years old, he happens to reach the peak of the 9th level of qi refining and is determined to try to break through, and the family does not have a second foundation-building pill. In this case, Ningling pills may be provided. When it comes to Ningling pill, Zhou Daocheng's eyes suddenly light up, and he turned around and asked, "Brother, are you cooperating with the Zhu family of Danyu Mountain? How is your relationship with the Zhu family?" Zhou Daobai thought for a while and said, "Not bad. The head of the Zhu family, Senior Zhu Chengqian, is a very kind person. He lent me money to develop the spiritual field in the early stage. He is a good person." Zhou Daocheng nodded slightly, thinking in his mind, and vaguely had some plans. "Brother, I may need to discuss a cooperation with the Zhu family in the future. It is related to the future of the family. Can you introduce it to me at that time?" It is related to the future of the family. Although Zhou Daobai was doubtful, he still firmly believed in Zhou Daocheng and answered directly, "No problem, you contact me at that time, and I will go to the Zhu family with you." The two parties agreed that Zhou Daobai would take his own items on the island and return directly to Shenline Mountain. Now that the Zhou family is at its weakest in 100 years, Zhou Daobai, as a 9th-level elder of qi refining, must return to the family in time to protect the family. And Zhou Daocheng also has his own things to do in the next period of time. After breaking through to the 8th level of qi refining, his strength has greatly improved. He needs to put his energy back into learning the formation, especially the 1st-level superior formation. Zhou Daocheng arranged the 4 children directly on the island of his eldest brother Zhou Daobai. However, their cultivation has not yet reached the qi refining stage, so they cannot learn the formation and need to practice first. Zhou Daocheng taught the Yuan Mai Ju to the 4 people. This is the practice that most people in the Zhou family practice, and it is also the practice that Zhou Daocheng first practiced. Any cultivator with spiritual roots can practice, and the breath is gentle and it is not easy to go crazy, which can ensure a smooth path in the early stage of cultivation. The 4 people's talents and comprehension are not high. Zhou Daocheng explained it many times before he could barely record the method of cultivation. But the path of cultivation depends not only on talent, but also on hard work day and night. If you can calm down, even a cultivator with 4 spiritual roots has a chance to peek into the foundation building realm. After teaching the 4 people, Zhou Daocheng also returned to his island. After several months, the moon grass and crystal jade rice planted on the island are still growing vigorously, and there are obvious signs of weeding, which shows that they have been taken care of seriously. When we rode to the valley, we could feel the rich spiritual energy as soon as we entered. The flowers, plants and trees around the valley were also stained with a trace of spiritual energy, becoming more lively and full of vitality. If we look from the top of the mountain, we can find that the ordinary mountaintop is now surrounded by mist, like a fairyland. Zhou Daocheng found Meng Yushan and learned about the recent situation. After confirming that everything was safe, he felt relieved. These days, the valley has also been developing in an orderly manner. Meng Yushan and Lin Yuan formed a small hunting team to clean up the monsters around them and obtain monster materials and natural treasures. However, a bad situation has appeared recently. The soul-devouring ant colony discovered before has expanded its living area during this period of time, and it is very likely that it has broken through to the 2nd level. Although it has not spread to the valley, the mine of the spirit snake sect, dozens of miles away, has been attacked recently and the losses are not small. This also made Zhou Daocheng alert. A 2nd-level soul-devouring ant colony is very dangerous. Qin Lai has been learning to make pills recently. His talent for alchemy is not good, but his character is hardworking enough. Now he has barely reached the level of a 1st-level low-grade alchemist. He can refine 2 1st-level low-grade pills, Yangqi pill, and blood coagulation pill. However, when Zhou Daocheng learned about the alchemy materials consumed by Qin Lai, he couldn't help but take a breath, and his heart was twitching with heartache. But in the end, he could only sigh helplessly. This is the characteristic of the art of cultivating immortals. If it is not a person with extremely high talent and comprehension, then he can only rely on countless failures to accumulate experience, which will consume a lot of materials. This is why many families, even if they have inheritance, cannot cultivate an alchemist, weapon refiner, talisman master, or array master. Because if there is no teacher's guidance and no solid funds, it is no different from burning spirit stones. Zhao Yunji also stayed in the valley during this period. She had some knowledge of planting and breeding, so she had been adjusting the ecological environment of the entire valley. In every corner of the valley, some 1st-level middle and lower spiritual trees, spiritual flowers, and spiritual herbs had been planted, which could not only stabilize the spiritual energy in the valley, but also warm up the land and continuously optimize the overall environment. Including the spiritual spring pool, which was originally in charge of Lin Yuan. It seemed to be filled up, but in fact there was no logic. Now, after Zhao Yunji's arrangement, the ecological structure of the spiritual spring pool has been optimized, with a large number of aquatic plants growing, as well as fish, shrimp, snails, loaches and other creatures, forming a small ecosystem. The 6 green-bearded shrimps have also grown a lot, but it will take some time to really start to generate income. Afterwards, Zhou Daocheng personally walked around the valley and found a situation that no one noticed. As the spiritual energy in the valley became more and more dense, some of the spiritual energy would drift out of the valley. This is actually a very normal situation, but it is very dangerous for the valley today. Because the soul-swallowing ant colony is extremely sensitive to spiritual energy, if it detects any abnormality here, it is likely to come closer and cause great losses. It seems that a larger formation must be arranged to cover the entire valley. Zhou Daocheng made a decision in his heart, but the formation that can cover the entire valley must be of high quality, and it is likely that he needs to reach the level of a 1st-class upper-grade formation master. Zhou Daocheng sighed secretly. It seems that the most important thing is to improve strength and formation level, otherwise many things will be difficult. Thinking of this, he chose to return to the underground cave as soon as possible, first practiced, calmed his mind and breath, and then began to study the formation. 100 Vine Formation and Green Spirit Sword Formation are the two formations with the highest priority, and there is no shortage of materials, even overflowing. As long as I become a first-class top-grade formation master, I will definitely be able to quickly improve the strength of the family in the valley. Zhou Daocheng was also full of excitement and began to study the formation. However, while Zhou Daocheng began to refine the first-class top-grade formation, Shenline Mountain had a more important thing that was in full swing. Deep Forest Mountain. In a hidden cave, several Zhou family refiners gathered here. The flames in the casting furnace were burning, reflecting the surrounding stone walls red. There were a total of 5 people present, one of whom was Zhou Yonghan, the head of the Zhou family, and the other 4 were the only first-level top-grade refiners in the Zhou family. Start refining the giant ridge bow. You can assist me and listen to my arrangements. The clan leader Zhou Yonghan opened his mouth and ordered. Everyone nodded nervously, breathing heavily. They participated in the refining of the giant ridge bow, which was really a helpless move. Clan leader Zhou Yonghan was seriously injured, and his life was about to end. His spiritual energy was almost exhausted. He could no longer complete the refining of the second-level magic weapon alone, so he could only call on everyone to help. Just based on their level, it is still a big challenge to participate in the refining of the second-level low-grade magic weapon. But now the arrow is on the string and it has to be shot. Zhou Yonghan looked calmly opened the furnace forging, first threw the second-level metal into the casting furnace, and began to forge small metal parts. In order to refine the giant ridge bow, the family treasury was almost emptied to gather all the required materials, and there was only enough for 1 copy, so it could only succeed, not fail. Outside the refining room, the Zhou family members were also anxiously waiting. The head of the family Zhou Changyi, the elders Zhou Chengyan, Zhou Chengguang, Zhou Shorong, Zhou Daobai and others were stationed around the refining room to ensure the safety of the environment. And such guarding took 6 days and 6 nights. Zhou Daobai sat cross-legged on the ground, frowning, showing a bit of weakness, and couldn't help but say, "Grandpa, 6 days have passed." Zhou Chengyi closed his eyes and rested, and said lightly, "Don't worry, the second-level magic weapon is not so easy to forge. Even in the heyday of the clan leader, it often takes a long time, let alone now. Can the old man's body still bear it? There is no such thing as whether it can bear it or not, it's just holding on." Zhou Chengyi slowly opened his eyes, with complicated emotions, staring at the closed door of the refining room. When the time came to the 15th day, all the tribesmen waiting outside the door were already haggard and depressed, and their hopes were gradually shattered. Such a long refining process consumes a lot of energy. How much can the success rate be increased? Alas, the refining of the giant ridge bow this time doesn't seem to be going smoothly. It's so hard to get all the materials together, is it going to end in failure again? How can people be willing to accept this? The tribe leader is not the same as he used to be. However, when everyone was in a low mood, the stone door that had been closed for a long time finally made a sound again. Ka-dang, clang, the stone door slowly opened, and everyone's eyes gathered, their pupils flickered, they were eager to know the result, but afraid to hear the answer, and all the complex emotions were integrated into their eyes. The first to walk out was Zhou Daoqi. Before his face appeared, his round belly was reflected in everyone's eyes, which made everyone feel distressed. It was not until Zhou Daoqi walked out with a tired face but a big mouth that the huge stone in everyone's heart fell. Live up to everyone's expectations. With the help of Zhou Daoqi, third uncle finally succeeded in refining the giant ridge bow. Hey, don't pull me. Get lost, Daoqi, you kid, have some shame, come out quickly, don't block third uncle's way. Zhou Daoqi cried and was pulled out of the stone gate by Zhou Chengyan, and thrown aside. Ahem, Chengyan, Daoqi is not talking nonsense. If it weren't for his help, third uncle wouldn't be able to complete the refining of the giant ridge bow. The clan leader Zhou Yonghan walked out slowly, and what he said made everyone stunned in place, looking at Zhou Daoqi in disbelief. It wasn't until other refiners came out and explained that everyone understood. In fact, the overall refining of the giant ridge bow was still completed by the clan leader Jo Yonghan, and other refiners were only responsible for simple tasks such as controlling the temperature and adding materials. It's just that the clan leader is no longer the same as he used to be. After completing the main body of the bow, he was no longer able to continue. Therefore, the forging of arrows in the later period was taken over by Zhou Daoqi. At the same time, with the guidance of the clan leader and the assistance of the elders, it took a full 7 days to complete. This is why it took so long to forge this time. But not only did the crowd not complain, but their faces were full of surprise, and their eyes looking at Zhou Daoqi almost swallowed him. Refining the arrows of the second-level giant ridge bow represents extraordinary significance. On the one hand, the arrows of the giant ridge bow are disposable magic weapons. Once used up, without the help of the clan leader to refine, the giant ridge bow is just an empty frame. But if Zhou Daoqi can also refine it, then even if the clan leader is not there in the future, the Zhou family can still use the giant ridge bow. On the other hand, it is also more important. Even if it is just the arrow of the giant ridge bow, it is also a second-level low-grade magic weapon. Zhou Daoqi can refine it, which is enough to show that his refining level has surpassed all the elders and touched the threshold of the second-level refiner. A teenager who has already stepped into the field of second-level refiners with 1 foot in the 7th level of qi refining. At this moment, everyone seemed to see a rising star. With such talent, as long as he successfully breaks through the foundation building stage, he will almost certainly reach the level of a second-level weapon refiner. There is even a great possibility that at the 9th level of qi refining, he can barely refine a second-level magic weapon. This is undoubtedly great news for the impoverished Zhou family. But another good news also surprised everyone, that is the result of more than 10 days of hard work, the giant ridge bow. The body of the bow is huge, and the bow wings are stretched out to a full 2 feet. The entire body is filled with blue-gray light. Exquisite lines cover the entire bow body. The vast aura can be felt even from dozens of meters away. The tight bowstring was full of power, and even the elders at the 9th level of qi refining could not pull it apart by themselves. The old face of the owner Zhou Chengyi trembled slightly, his fingers gently touched the work of art, his eyes were slightly red. Third uncle, what special effects does this magical weapon have? Fourth elder Zhou Chengyan asked. Generally speaking, second-level magic weapons will have some special effects, such as the spiritual attack of the soul-suppressing bell, the powerful attack of Chen Jiaonian's spear, the blue moon bracelet that can form a light blue protective cover, etc. Zhou Yonghan pressed his hands on the giant ridge bow and said, "The giant ridge bow is considered a very powerful magic weapon even among the second-order low-grade magic weapons. It just requires a lot of power to control and is relatively cumbersome to use. It lacks flexibility. But the advantages are also obvious, that is, extremely high stability and terrifying explosive power. If used as a strategic backup, it can turn defeat into victory at a critical moment." Everyone gasped after hearing this, and even the clan leaders in the foundation building stage called its explosive power terrifying, so it shows that the strength of the giant ridge bow is indeed extremely terrifying. After all, just looking at the size, you can tell that it is not comparable to an ordinary second-level magic weapon. It is very likely that when this magic weapon was created, it was not used as an ordinary bow and arrow magic weapon, but a large magic weapon similar to the siege crossbow in the Mortal Kingdom. This also determines the terrifying power of the giant ridge bow. But the power of the giant ridge bow is more than that. Zhou Daoqi took out 3 arrows and handed them to the head of the family, Zhou Chengyi, and said, "Head, in the refining method of the giant ridge bow, there are also 3 arrows with different functions, which correspond to 3 different characteristics and uses." 3 arrows. Zhou Chengyi raised his eyebrows slightly, and really felt 3 completely different auras from the arrows in his hand. The rose-red arrow, named Flame Arrow, is wrapped in explosive and hot power, mainly killing with power. The light blue arrow is the Wind Arrow, with a touch of agility and sharpness. When a breeze blows, it will surround the arrow and form a small airflow. The pale golden arrow is an armor-piercing arrow, full of hardness and sharpness. Just by looking at it, you feel that the sharpness of the arrowhead is about to pierce your eyes. They are mainly based on attack, speed, and armor-piercing, which also means 3 different functions. And the power is very good, which makes everyone present amazed. After the shock, the head of the family also began to arrange several elders to learn to control this second-level magic weapon. After all, if you have a second-level magic weapon but don't know how to use it, it will be a big joke. And then, a shocking scene appeared. The fourth elder Zhou Chengyan and the sixth elder Zhou Chengguang input magic power at the same time, but it is still difficult to shake. Giant Ridge Bow. It was not until the seventh elder Zhou Shorong came forward to help that he struggled to pull the bowstring, but even with all his strength, he still couldn't pull it to the full bow state. There is no doubt that the power of the Giant Ridge Bow did not disappoint people at all, and it was even more powerful than expected, but the difficulty of using it was also extremely high. Each use may require the participation of multiple 9th-level Qi refining elders, which is very costly. But there is no doubt that with the Giant Ridge Bow, the Zhou family's safety in the deep forest mountain area is also guaranteed, enough to deal with most crises, and there is no need to worry about the threat of monsters below the second level. The appearance of the Giant Ridge Bow is undoubtedly a shot of confidence for the Zhou family members. While bringing a sense of security, it also vents the depression in their hearts these days. Almost all the clan members showed a surprised smile, and some clan elders cried with joy. When everyone was rejoicing, they did not see Zhou Yonghan showing a relieved and pale smile in the corner. Due to his weak body, Zhou Yonghan did not celebrate with the clan members, but returned to the cave to rest in advance with the help of the head of the family Zhou Chengyi. On the way, a low voice suddenly asked, "Chengyi, is there any news about the foundation building pill?" "Uncle San, I have sent people to find out. Qingshan sect will not start refining the foundation building pill in the near future, but there will be an auction in Luwan Market, and the foundation building pill will appear in the finale of the auction." Zhou Yonghan's eyes condensed slightly, as if he had made up his mind, and asked, "How many spirit stones can the family mobilize?" "The accumulation in the past few years, plus the spirit stones obtained from the sale of assets, is almost more than 50,000. If some resources and magic tools are sold, it can barely raise 20,000 more." Zhou Yonghan frowned and thought, shook his head and said, "The foundation building pill at the auction will definitely not be taken for 50,000 low-grade spirit stones, and 70,000 is barely enough. You should raise spirit stones as soon as possible and try to buy a foundation building pill for the family before I die." Zhou Chengyi gritted his teeth and nodded cruelly. 50,000 spirit stones are already the limit of the family. It was barely reached after selling the shops in Sifang Market and Luwan Market. And 70,000 spirit stones would almost empty the Zhou family's assets, destroy their foundation, and even make it impossible to recover for a long time in the future. But for the inheritance of foundation building, the Zhou family had to bear this risk. During the period when Zhou Yonghan was resting, the Zhou family began to secretly go to the distant market to sell various resources of the clan and raise a large number of spirit stones. Bai Lin Lake, underground cave. Zhou Daocheng sat cross-legged, his bright eyes reflected the formation pattern, and sweat broke out on his forehead. The difficulty of Bai Ling's sword formation was very high. Even though he had excellent comprehension, he still felt a little bit of effort. Letting the sweat drip from his forehead, Zhou Daocheng stood still, remembering the complex formation pattern in front of him in his mind without any error. Now he is facing a threshold. A threshold from a first-level middle-grade formation master to a first-level upper-grade formation master. Once crossed, the formation skills will have a qualitative leap and reach a new level. After a long exhale, Zhou Daocheng cast his eyes on the purple qi-green spirit bamboo. The first purple qi-green spirit bamboo, nurtured by the innate purple qi, has reached the second-level middle grade at a very fast speed. The quality is too high, and this is the first time to refine a first-level top-grade array plate. He is really not sure that he can succeed. Therefore, Zhou Daocheng finally chose a first-level top-grade purple qi-green spirit bamboo. Although the quality is lower, it is more than enough to refine a first-level top-grade array plate. Cut it off with the bamboo root. The bamboo stem is as warm as jasper, surrounded by gentle green light, and there is a faint purple air wandering. Moreover, the originally plain bamboo stem is now engraved with a very light purple pattern under the influence of the innate purple qi, full of mysterious breath. In terms of quality alone, it is even higher than the ordinary first-level top-grade green spirit bamboo, and is definitely the top existence among the first-level materials. First, use simple techniques to refine the purple air green bamboo. followed by the coordination of various materials, the arrangement of array patterns, the arrangement of array plates. Zhou Daocheng did not dare to be careless, and tried his best in every step to prevent any possible mistakes. But even so, the final result was still not as expected. The deviation of the array pattern led to failure and destroyed most of the array materials, which made Zhou Daocheng beat his chest and stamp his feet. Fortunately, the most precious material, purple air green bamboo, was not directly destroyed because of its extremely high quality. In the second attempt, Zhou Daocheng was more careful. With the experience of the first time, he no longer followed the steps and rigidly applied the arrangement method, but added his own understanding and made subtle adjustments. But unfortunately, the second attempt still ended in failure. Even in the preparation stage, it failed, and even the purple air green bamboo was not used. Zhou Daocheng soon understood the reason. It was not that his array ability was insufficient, but that his refining level was too low. Although formations and refining are two completely different fields, they are intertwined. Formations require simple refining of formation components, and the production of formation plates also requires the use of refining knowledge. It is just that in the first level low-grade and medium-grade formations, the refining technology used is relatively simple, and Zhou Daocheng can barely meet it. However, after reaching the first level high-grade, the process of refining the first level high-grade formation plate is more complicated, and Zhou Daocheng's technique is relatively rough, so it is very easy to have problems. Considering this aspect, Zhou Daocheng is also quite helpless. The continuous formation attempts have exhausted his physical strength. He can only rest and recover for a period of time. At the same time, after some thinking, Zhou Daocheng finally made up his mind that in order to make the subsequent formation road smoother, it is necessary to make up for the knowledge of refining. Although he did not follow the family predecessors to learn refining, Zhou Daocheng still has the most basic refining inheritance in his mind. For Zhou Daocheng, it is indeed troublesome to reach the first level medium grade or high grade refiner, but the first level low grade may not be a big problem. It's troublesome, but I just hope that the first grade top quality formation won't disappoint us. Zhou Daocheng sighed. After recovering his physical and mental strength, Zhou Daocheng temporarily focused on refining the weapon. Just before, when I raided the treasury of the small family in Deep Forest Mountain, I obtained a large amount of materials, some of which could be used to refine weapons. Zhou Daocheng was not stingy and began to study and experiment. Since he had lived in the Zhou family since he was a child, he had learned a lot of weapon refining knowledge, so his progress was not slow. And with his extremely strong understanding, the first level low-level immortal cultivation skills are not very complicated, and are completely within the scope of what he can accept. It took almost 7 days for Zhou Daocheng to complete the entry from a layman and become a first-level low-grade weapon refiner. In the absence of a casting furnace, the crudest refining method was used to successfully refine the simplest long sword weapon. Although the level of a first-level weapon refiner is nothing among weapon refiners, it is enough for formations. He tried refining the formation disc again, and this time the situation went much smoother. Many problems that had not been discovered before were also discovered, and Zhou Daocheng adjusted them one by one. In the end, it took nearly half a month to successfully complete the refining of the Jade Spirit Sword formation. Although only one purple Chi Jade Spirit bamboo was used, there were 5 sharp purple Chi Jade Spirit swords floating in the formation, all of which were full of sharp auras. By manipulating the formation, Zhou Daocheng can control the movement of the spirit sword in the formation at will, and it is extremely flexible, like an arm. Even a high-level sword cultivator may not be as good at controlling spiritual sword instruments as Zhou Daocheng in the formation. With just a slight control of the Jade Spirit Sword, it was like a cold light piercing the air. The clear sound of the sword echoed in the ears, and the terrifying aura was like a light on the back, making people shudder. From the perspective of the momentum of use, the Bailing sword formation is not as good as the splitting gold formation. From the exaggeration of the effect, it is not as good as the golden Jade vine formation. But as long as you experience it yourself, you can clearly know that the power of the Bailing sword formation is definitely more terrifying than the other 2 formations. Originally, the quality of the Bailing sword formation reached the pinnacle of a first-level high-grade formation. It could be used both offensively and defensively, and was powerful in combat. It could even serve as a spiritual formation to protect the clan of a small family. What's more, the current set of Biling Sword formation is made of purple chi jingling bamboo, and its power is even higher. Moreover, Zhou Daocheng was also keenly aware that it seemed to be due to the effect of innate purple energy, which made this formation connect with his own mind, making it more convenient to control and able to exert stronger power. In terms of attack power alone, Jade Spirit Sword formation is comparable to the 9th level of Qi refining. It is not even weak among the 9th level of weapon refining. Coupled with my own defense power, it can truly reach the 90% level of Qi refining, strength. Zhou Daocheng's eyes showed surprise, feeling the powerful power and full of surprise. But this time, he doesn't plan to end the retreat, but plans to refine a set of formations again, 100 Tang formation. Yellow thorn vine is the main spiritual plant grown in the valley, and thorn vine array and 100 vine array are the main refining objects. Moreover, the golden Jade vine formation previously created using the formation method has shown great power, which made Zhou Daocheng very satisfied. The 100 Tang formation, which is of better quality, more powerful and integrates attack, defense and control, is even more exciting. However, Zhou Daocheng does not plan to refine the 100 vine formation, but intends to directly use the fusion formation to create a stronger formation. After all, the previous example is in front of us. The thorn vine formation itself is not very powerful, but after being integrated into the golden sword formation, the strength has more than doubled. Zhou Daocheng had already planned to merge the formation with 100 Tang formation and chose a weaker formation among the first order high-grade formations, Jinj formation. It is of the same origin as the golden sword formation. It is modified on the basis of the first order mid-grade formation to enhance its power, thus forming the first order high-grade golden knife formation. Because there are more than golden sword formation. He also had experience in refining the more difficult purple chi jade spirit sword formation, so Zhou Daocheng only studied it for 2 days and kept the pattern of the golden jade formation in his mind. 100 Tang formation was difficult to learn, and it took 10 days. But this is just the beginning. The most difficult part is to integrate the formation. This is a very advanced knowledge that requires a lot of mental and physical energy, and there is also the possibility of failure. However, Zhou Daocheng is not worried about failure. After all, there is already an example of Jinj vine formation. This time it is just 2 sets of first-order mid-level formations that have been upgraded to first-order high-level formations. However, there is not much difference in the types and characteristics of the 2 formations, and the fusion process is also relatively similar. Based on his previous experience, Zhou Daocheng completely concentrated on the fusion of formation patterns. This process lasted for half a month. After completing a series of complex integration and optimization, a new formation appeared in front of us, Jinj Beidang formation. In terms of the difficulty of the formation, it surpasses Jin Jie formation and 100 Tang formation and is not much different from the difficulty of Biling sword formation. But Zhou Daocheng estimated that the power may be stronger than the ordinary Biling sword formation. After all, it combines the strength of the 2 formations. Zhou Daocheng stretched himself with difficulty. His body was already very tired. Just the process of merging the array made him work intensively for nearly a month. This made him sigh that integrating the formation was indeed a big project, which added a big burden to his own formation path. However, once the formation fusion is completed, the benefits are permanent. In order to fully recover his physical strength, Zhou Daocheng entered the state of cultivation and operated the Wutu Kun Yu Gong to recover his physical strength. Since he had consumed the spiritual energy in his body many times, his strength was slightly improved after recovery. If it weren't for the Wutu Kun Yu Gong constantly warming his body, he might not be able to withstand such a high-intensity formation refining. After fully recovering, Zhou Daocheng also worked hard and directly refined the Golden Spear 100 Vine formation. Although it was only 1 word different from the Golden Spear Vine formation, the difficulty and power of refining were not at the same level. Even the consumed materials shocked Zhou Daocheng. The number of first-grade superior yellow thorn vines needed alone reached 20, and Zhou Daocheng searched the entire valley and only found 12 yellow thorn vines of quality that met the standard. There was really no way. Zhou Daocheng made up his mind, gritted his teeth, and sent Lin Yuan to Baihifang market urgently, and spent a lot of money to buy 8 first-grade superior yellow thorn vines, which barely gathered the materials. As for metal materials, he had just plundered the family treasury of the small family and obtained 3 pieces of first-grade fine meteorite iron. After a delay of half a month, he officially started to refine the Golden Spear 100 Vine formation. He made a mistake once in the middle, but finally succeeded in refining it after 20 days. With 2 sets of spiritual light-flowing formations in his pocket, Zhou Daocheng's confidence increased significantly. If it was a strong man who had just broken through the foundation building period, he might not be able to fight. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.